Sorry for the delay. We had a few technical issues coming out of executive session. As usual, I'm going to begin the meeting with public comment. Public comment is limited to no more than 3 minutes on a topic that's not on the agenda. Do we have any public comment? Seeing none, I think we'll move on to the consent agenda. Is there anything that anybody wants to pull off of the consent agenda for discussion? Where's Shannon? Shannon, would you explain what you were saying earlier? There's something on here that...
Yes, so on the consent agenda that's listed in your packet, there's a second one-day liquor license listed for Kathleen Moore.
Yes.
It is not on the version of the agenda that was posted online.
Okay.
But it was included in your packet materials, so I'm seeking approval tonight, and it can be ratified at your next meeting.
Okay.
The event is also the same evening of the next
So
meeting.
we need to do it, okay. Okay, great, thank you. Thank you, Shannon. Okay, is everybody okay with the consent agenda? Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Very good. It's unanimous. Next is select board appointments.
Okay, so I move to appoint Agnes Lubega Kalisa of 12 Nathan Pratt Drive, Unit 4, to the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Commission for a term to expire May 31st, 2027. And Edward Bernard of 42 Elsinore Street to the Concord Cultural Council for a term to expire May 31st, 2027.
And these were the ones we had nominated in the previous meeting, correct?
That's
Yes.
right, that's right.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Very good. Okay, town manager's report.
Okay, thank you and good evening. Yesterday, we had a very successful tree lighting ceremony. Staff is reporting that we had 6,000 to 7,000 people up. Pre-pandemic, the number of participants we had or attendees was probably usually under 2,000.
Wow.
So it's significantly grown. I had a number of people mention that in passing and talking to people, they were very aware that there were a lot of people that were from outside of town, so that's nice. I know there were a number of tree lighting or similar events yesterday, so it was nice people chose to come to Concord, and it's good practice for us as we get ready for the 250th.
Was there more advertising, or why do we think there were more people? Anybody?
I don't think so. It was a relatively nice day. It's a nice event. I don't know, maybe we have the best Santa.
And I know the last time it was like 4 food trucks, right?
We approved
How did the 4
Yeah.
food trucks
We have
all
Do
work
we-
out?
4, yes.
Jess, do we know anything about the
How did
food
they all do?
trucks? If
3 of the 4 made it. The 4th one, I guess there was an 11-hour issue with the permit, so that's why they were not.
Yeah, okay, so just to repeat in case people in the audience couldn't hear, 3 of the 4 were at the event.
Yep,
Great.
they were good.
Let's see. I wanted to mention that last week we received a new ambulance. And I mention this because when Chief Judge reported this, he said it was ordered 3 years ago.
Wow.
Oh, my gosh.
So it is taking that long for ambulances to come in, to be outfitted for our operation and to be put in service. It will be put in service within a few weeks. When this ambulance was ordered, the cost was $316,000, which is a lot. He said if we had to replace that today, the estimate is $540,000.
Wow.
And we do, I believe, in our fiscal 26 capital, we have another ambulance that we're looking to replace.
Sorry, so this is a replacement?
Replacement, yes.
So this isn't part of the advanced level service? It was basic?
3 years ago.
Well,
Yeah, that's right.
yes, I mean, when we go paramedic, we're not going to have an additional ambulance. We will have additional equipment
Great.
available on the ambulance. I wanted to mention that our Minuteman Media Network team will be attending a conference in Connecticut, I believe, next week. And once again, they are competing in a video competition. They're in the finals, and they will place first, second, or third. So that's exciting. The Light Board is meeting on Wednesday morning this week with the intent of conducting their rate hearing. And our director reported that rates are projected to go up 6 to 7% in calendar year 2025. I wanted to just provide a brief update on CEL. And Megan, please feel free to jump in if I misspeak. So last week, we issued an addendum to our RFP 25-2006. This is for the landfill. The addendum included an extension for the request for proposals. The new deadline is January 17th. Based on the site visit, there were several, that was well attended by prospective bidders. There were several questions that needed to be answered in order for prospective bidders to provide good proposals. And so we will be answering those questions, and as a result have extended the due date to January 17th. And those were the items that I wanted to mention this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, Carrie, is there any follow-up on Emerson as far as CEL?
So,
Yeah, Emerson Umbrella, sorry.
right, so the Emerson umbrella. So nothing just yet. Megan, do you want to add anything to that?
No, nothing just yet. I do meet with them on a regular basis. In fact, I met with the executive director this afternoon. I think capacity-wise, we're trying to answer the questions for this landfill RFP before we revisit that one. But we are learning a lot through this process, and this RFP was done a little bit differently. It's a different product because it's at the landfill, so it's a tower. But we're learning a lot through this process, and hope to apply some of the things that we've learned to a new effort to improve cell service in downtown.
So, I'm sorry, what's the next step at Emerson Umbrella? Are we, I mean, I know, because there wasn't, we got a sort of half a response, right, from Verizon, or kind of a
Yeah.
they responded, but not really. I just didn't know if the next step, are we going back out to, like, what are we trying to do there next?
Yeah, we plan to take what we've learned about the response that we did receive, and understand what is reasonable to expect a provider to do for kind of site suitability, and working with our consultant to find a request for proposals that in tentative lease agreement that's both suitable to the community and the umbrella, and also would be suitable for potential applicants. So trying to walk that line there, because I think that the RFP that we provided, we felt comfortable with. This is representing what we're looking for, but trying to understand and work with our consultant on what the industry providers are willing to invest to research it at that level before they're awarded was a learning point there. And so trying to meet that gap, and yes, we are planning to do it. It's my long way of saying it.
So, and the timeline would follow from some resolution on the landfill?
Yes, I'm just hoping to answer the questions at least for that one, work with our RF consultant, and then move to focus on that one once that one gets
Great,
a little
thank
further
you.
along.
Any other questions for the town manager? Okay, good. Carrie, you're up next for the preliminary town budget review.
No, you skipped a couple things. The chair's report.
No, we're here. We're right
Oh,
there.
yeah, sorry.
Yeah, okay.
We're good.
All right, thank you. So, you pulling up? Sorry. All right. So you have me on this topic tonight because Anthony is away on vacation. There's a lot of information in the packet, and it really is background information for you to have as we go through the budget process. I have summarized that information in five slides, which I'm going to walk through with you momentarily, and it was distributed to you this afternoon.
So sorry, this is not in the packet.
It was sent via email.
Yeah, no, I remember.
So
there was a
this is
separate
a
thing.
summary of the materials that were in the packet. And so just to start, while we're bringing that up, I wanted to start with capital first. So we had,
Yep, good. There you go.
perfect. All right. Hope this is easy to see. We're following a slightly modified process this year with capital. We've had 2 tri-board meetings. The last one was on November 18th, and that with the school committee, the finance committee. We have the third scheduled for December 16th. This slide here talks about the four categories of capital. So we have capital outlay, which is the capital that we carry in our operating budgets, and then we have Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 capital. I've identified what the dollar values are typically for each of the capital categories and how they are funded. So capital outlay, again, in the operating budget, the range, I would say, is typically under $10,000, but what we have done this year is we have some items that are higher than that. And the types of items that are included in outlay are capital that is recurring year after year after year. So in public works, in the fleet maintenance, each year there's $10,000 in the budget for replacement of tools. It's always 10,000. We're not putting something like that in capital. We're carrying that in outlay in the operating budget because we know year after year it's going to be in there. Adding it is not going to spike anybody's budget. We're paying for that within guideline use of cash. Tier 1 is the category $10,000 to $250,000. That source of funding is cash. We have an existing financial policy that says on an annual basis we should spend 2 to 3% of our budget on Tier 1 capital. And for fiscal '26, that 2 to 3% range is $2.75 million to $4.1 million. And right now we're carrying a total of $3.236 million, which is about 2.35% in Tier 1, and that is combined town and school. For Tier 2, the range is $250 to $2.5 million. That is traditionally funded through the issuance of debt. Our policy says no more than 5% of budget annually to Tier 2 capital, Tier 2 debt-funded capital. That range, I've identified 4 to 5% on the chart here. So 4% is just under $4.2 million, 5% is $5.2 million. In the draft fiscal '26 capital plan, we are carrying $3.2 million, which is significantly lower than what we've done in the past, but we are consciously trying to pay cash, more cash, less debt service, because we know we have big needs coming. So that also is 2.35%. You can see those tier 1 and Tier 2, those numbers are fairly similar. Both represent 2.35% of budget. I do have a meeting scheduled with school administration later this week, and we are going to walk through capital, and we're going to prioritize in the event that the budget plan can't withstand $3.2 million in cash in particular. But we've done a lot of work on the town side to make sure that we're bringing forward things that are ready, that departments have the bandwidth to move forward. One of the things that we're seeing is obviously there are a lot of needs, particularly in public works, but we have to match the funding with the ability to advance projects. We don't want to be setting aside funding for projects that we're not yet ready to advance. And then Tier 3 is anything that's above 2.5 million, and that the usual source of funding would be excluded debt. And that, we don't have a policy target for that. That's not addressed in the existing policy because that's brought forward as needed. But one of the pieces of information in the packet shows the update for the capital. And I don't, there's a one-page sheet.
Yep, yep.
So you can see that for Tier 3, right now, we're proposing 4.35 million, and that's all road work. And we will be talking about that more on at the December 16th meeting, and then again at the Finance Committee public hearing that is scheduled for January. So right now, we're really focusing on fiscal '26 and aligning that with the plan that's coming forward from the Finance Committee. For sure, when we get to public hearing in January, we'll be talking about the full 10 years. And what I can tell you is, for sure, the big building projects are within that 10-year horizon. We understand they may not move forward as fast as we would like to see them, but we are talking about them in this planning period.
So before you leave this slide, let's just open it up for questions.
Yeah.
Just a quick question. The Tier 3 road work.
Yeah.
When you say road work, does that include roads only or streetscape kind of stuff that goes along with it?
So the Tier 3 is the pavement management. In Tier 2, we have traffic improvements, which might include signalization, design work for intersection improvements that we might be looking for grant funding. In Tier 2, we have bicycle and pedestrian safety improvements.
Okay.
So that is within Tier 2, and then we have traffic signals and signage. So there's a lot of related work in Tier 2. The Tier 3 is the pavement management piece of the plan.
So pavement management refers to just roads, not like sidewalks or bike lanes, just roads?
The roads.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
No, I guess I was more curious about since the amount that you put for Tier 2 was lower, was there anything that staff thought they'd really like to do, but it's really a staffing thing that you can't proceed with those projects?
There are a lot of things that we didn't feel we were ready to advance. And so we're trying to be very conscious of the ability to move projects forward.
That's fair.
So Carrie, first of all, thanks for the information. I think it's good to see it early, right? To see it here as we're getting into this planning cycle. So I'm just curious, if I were to look at these numbers, FY26 draft, how does that compare to what we expect to spend in FY25, right? So are these numbers higher, lower, by category? And then, related, like when we look at sort of a Tier 3, so we're adding debt, even in Tier 2, I guess, right? We're adding debt, what's rolling off? How much is rolling off? This debt's going to add so much depreciation, it's going to add certain expense. How much is, or interest cost, how much is rolling off? So again, I'm just always trying to look at, so is the net total going up or down?
Yeah.
Like when we look at these numbers?
Yeah. So in fiscal '25, the Tier 2 spending that was approved was $2,180,000. So I'm sorry, Tier 1.
Tier 1.
The Tier 1. So the cash portion, 2.18 million. So that is going up. So we're consciously looking to spend more, to fund more of our plan through cash on hand versus debt service. The Tier 2 number is somewhat lower. I don't know why, I can't recall the exact number for fiscal '25, but the projection for fiscal '26 is somewhat lower. We typically plan for, with the issuance of the Tier 2 debt, that the debt service, annual debt service impact is about $800,000, is what we typically have been adding each year. This, right now, with this level of debt, we're projecting $650,000. So we're trying to bring that down, the annual debt service payment.
I just want to interject here that the reason why we have a policy for both Tier 1 and Tier 2 is the thinking is that the money spent here is to refresh our current assets. So, right, it's not really, additive, it's more just keeping level.
And again, trying to spend more cash and less in
And
debt
shifting it
service
that way,
and
right?
interest.
The thinking being that if we, refresh our assets, it'll cost us less in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions, Cameron?
But also paying it in cash instead of debt, that's good
Is a good
policy.
thing, too.
Yep.
So, Carrie, I just want to make sure I heard you correctly. So the Tier 1, the 3.2, that includes both the town and the schools, right? CPS, right?
It does.
And Tier 2 is still, you're still having conversations?
No, tier 2,
Or is,
this whole plan is town and school consolidated.
great, I didn't know that. Okay.
What we are doing is we're going to now get into a prioritization in the event that these numbers are too high
Got it.
to be sustained.
Okay. And the Tier 1 is a separate warrant article. Tier 2 is, these are all separate warrant articles. Am I understanding that?
No, we do, what we have done is town capital in one article, school capital in another article. We would be doing one consolidated capital article for town, CPS, Tier 1 and Tier 2.
Okay, good. Okay, so one article, the whole shebang. Great,
One
thank you. Okay,
article.
next slide.
Oops, okay.
I think we're all set for next
Yeah.
slide. Right,
So
good.
then I wanted to talk about the FinCom guideline, where we are in the process, and help answer any questions. So there's a lot of information in the packet about what we have provided to the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee, the end of the summer, issues what we call a guidelines information request letter, where they ask a series of questions to all of the budgeting entities, and then they go through that in the fall, or this year, we did that in November. So the town's response to their questions is included in the packet. I'm not going to go through that. I'm happy to answer any questions. I think what I would like you to take away from that, from an operational perspective, is that most of our departments are in good shape, in very good shape, in terms of having the staff they need to conduct the work. Now, this is a really busy year for everybody because of the additional things that we're doing. But we have made a concerted effort over the years, and I know the Finance Committee talked about the level of increase in town spending, in town headcount over the last 10 years, and it has gone up. During that time, we've added school resource officers, we added the ambulance overnight in West Concord, we stood up a facilities department, we've accommodated significant growth in the footprint of the library, we've added staff. There have been a lot of increases in a lot of places, so that I wouldn't want anybody to think that's not recognized. The one department that really is not well-positioned to meet its mission is Public Works. In terms of funding for projects, in terms of headcount to get those projects done. That is the one area, if there can be growth, if growth can be sustained within the budget, that is where I could see growth. And I guess that's the one thing that I'd like for you to take away from the information that we provided to the Finance Committee.
The other thing I also though saw in that narrative was how we've been funding OPEB in our retirement system so aggressively.
Yeah, and I will.
You're going to talk to
I
that
will
later?
talk
Great.
about
Okay,
that.
we'll talk about it later.
So in these slides, I have reformatted information that was included in the packet to me in a way that I think is easier to understand. So on this first slide, well, I should back up and say, the Finance Committee issued its preliminary guideline for the town CPS and CCRSD at its last meeting. For the town, the guideline, the preliminary guideline was a plus 2.6%. This information reflects the Finance Committee's guideline. So on this first slide, we're looking at revenue. And the Finance Committee typically, the first place they go with revenue is they want to keep property taxes, keep the unused levy capacity about the same. So not further eat into the unused levy capacity. So the property tax increase for the existing homeowner is plus 2.5%, the 2.5% that is allowed under Mass General Law. So you can see here that according to the budget and the tax rate that was the tax rate that was actually just certified by the Department of Revenue earlier today, the unused levy capacity for fiscal 25 is 3.27%. And so in projecting property tax increase for fiscal 26, the Finance Committee wanted to keep that unused levy capacity at about the same. And based on all of the projected revenues and the Finance Committee's initial guidance on property taxes for fiscal 26, the unused levy capacity would increase just slightly to 3.3%. Are there any questions about that? So there's nothing unusual about the Finance Committee, their first pass wanting to hold property taxes. So on an annual basis, you can see that property taxes are growing at about $4 million. About $3 million of that is the 2.5% increase, and about $1 million of that is the projected new growth.
Got it.
As I think was mentioned at the last meeting or mentioned to you before, even though we know that there's likely to be higher new growth than $1 million, particularly with the construction of the Novo 40B project. We don't know when that will happen, so we're not planning for that at this point. So if we could move to the next slide, which is kind of small. So this is the forecast, again, using the Finance Committee's projection. This slide shows all of our fixed expense. So our employee benefits costs, including retirement assessment, the OPEB assessment, debt service, that's all projected here. So for fiscal 26, we're projecting total revenues of $144.1 million of that, and projecting that 33.1 million of that will be used through the payment of these fixed costs. I have highlights next to retirement assessment that I wanted to mention to you. Our retirement system is very well positioned. Its funding ratio is very high. It is possible that in this 5-year period that we would be at a fully funded status. And when that happens, our assessment will go down to what is referred to as normal costs. So right now, our assessment is normal costs plus a percent or a portion of unfunded liability that we're paying on an annual basis. Once we're fully funded, when that unfunded liability becomes zero, the assessment will be reduced somewhat.
How much is that approximately?
It's between, my recollection is between $1 to $2 million. So
Every
it's
year?
significant.
The OPEB?
The base, no, the retirement assessment,
Oh, okay.
Every year it'll be that much lower than it is
Yes.
now.
yes.
And I think it was 31, right, when it's supposed to be funded? I think I read
Yeah,
that in the material.
it has bounced around, I think in the time I've been here, between like fiscal '29 and '31. It has to do with how the assets are performing. But it is possible that there would be some significant relief in that portion of fixed cost during this 5-year period. So I wanted to mention that.
Good.
The next thing I wanted to call your attention to is the OPEB assessment. So for the last, 3 years or so, we have been funding OPEB on a level payment. So before, years ago, before we did this, we funded this based on the actuarial determined, the ARC or the ADC. And it bounced around somewhat because it was our OPEB assessment our OPEB liability is valued on an annual basis. It changes depending on headcount, performance of assets, and it was bouncing around. And I talked to the actuary because of the level of our funding. If we could just come up with a level payment so that we had some predictability for budget. And so we did come up with that. And we have been paying that $1,467,000 a year for probably at least 3 years. So at this point, our OPEB liability is about 2/3 funded. And so I had a recent conversation with the actuary and said, you know what, could we do something less now? For instance, could we do half? Something as drastic as half. And I'm waiting for the final report, but the indication I got was that it is likely that we could drop to half of that contribution and still credibly be paying a flat rate on an annual basis. So that is some potential relief to the tax base. So I wanted to mention that.
Does that mean it would cost more in the long run?
No,
Okay.
Is it just closing the gap at a lower rate?
yeah,
It does stretch out the funding, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, it just stretches
Yeah.
it out, yeah.
And you don't think that will impact our bond rating?
no.
No.
We're very highly
I know, I
funded
saw that.
relative to
Yeah.
other
I just
towns,
wanted
if I
her to say
recall,
it.
yeah.
I just don't want to go backwards. And
Yeah.
go-
No, I
don't
know,
want to increase our
absolutely, right, right.
unfundedness. As long as
Yeah.
it's just making
Maintain-
progress at a
so-
slower
so the
rate,
goal-
that's,
I mean, I
yeah.
wonder if that's a policy. Your goal was to keep it sort of flat and predictable, but can we do what Cameron's saying, is keep it at a certain percentage funding?
Yeah, I do think it's a policy decision. This is not something we would be
Right.
looking to do administratively.
Yeah.
But I do think it's worth.
Coming back with the options, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Here's what
So-
it,
Good.
yeah.
So are there, the other, I guess another thing I should mention about health insurance, and I know Anthony talked about this at the last meeting. So we're seeing, he's projecting a 12% increase in fiscal '26 for health insurance. I think that is high. I think we will learn that is high.
Yeah, I was
What-
going to say, it's almost 15%, yeah. I mean, 8 million to 9.2, right?
Yeah.
12%, yeah, he did.
What I will tell you is, on the town side, only about 2/3 of benefit-eligible employees enroll in health insurance. And on the school side, it's been somewhat lower. So the town has benefited significantly by the fact that a lot of employees do not take the town's health insurance. We did see an increase, what I would call a significant increase in the number of enrollees opening the current fiscal year. I want to say on the town side, the increase was pretty close to 10%. So that was significant.
So 10% more taking health
Yes,
insurance?
taking health
And what
insurance.
accounts for that? I know that we changed carriers. I think it was the carrier switch.
I don't know, because we did switch from Minuteman Neshoba Health Group to Maya for fiscal '25. Maya only offers Blue Cross. Our last year at Minuteman Neshoba, we offered Blue Cross. So we did see a number of people move from the other plans to Blue Cross in Minuteman Neshoba Health Group, but they already had Blue Cross. I have asked the staff to the best that they can track why people are doing that. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, so just my, so I was just looking at the big categories. So group insurance up 1.2 million. The debt service, the town debt service, principal and interest is up about $1 million year over year.
So are you in,
I was looking at your slide
yes,
here,
in-
just from
yes.
last year to this year.
Yep.
So the town debt service is going up by about $1 million. What?
so that is the middle school project? So I think you're in line, it's noted as B2 CPS principal?
I was looking at debt service within levy limit, town principal and interest.
Within levy.
So, yeah, going from 3.5 to 4.5 million. I just wasn't clear what's driving the town.
So that is capital projects, approved capital projects that are being funded. And I think what's happening here is we did a late issuance of debt, and the first debt service payment is not until fiscal '26, and that's the same thing with the middle school. So I think that whole issue, we're actually seeing the impact of two capital plans being funded in fiscal '26.
So those are town projects that were,
Those are the tier 2 capital plan projects.
For town and
There's a-
school,
No, well, that line is just the town.
Yeah, for the town.
just town.
We can go back and take a look.
yeah,
at
no,
that.
I don't need the, I'm just, I wasn't sure what was driving that increase. The public school thing, I get. It's the middle school, I think, likely driving a chunk of that on the CPS principal and interest.
So Carrie, when you did the slide earlier, which showed the tier 2 debt, right,
Yeah.
within levy, there's a timing difference between what's in that number and what hits here because this is actual debt service.
That's debt service.
And
yes.
what you showed at the previous slide was what gets approved as the amount.
Yes.
So I guess my point being that we didn't spend more money, it's the timing
I
of
think it's the
what
timing
of what
because
was already approved.
because of the late bond issue, later than usual bond issue that we did. I guess it was in
It was
September.
September.
It was
we got
September,
that.
yeah. Yep.
We didn't do one at the end of the fiscal year. There was no additional debt service payment in fiscal '25. The first debt service payment is fiscal '26. But we'll go back and
That
look
makes
at that,
sense.
make sure
Yeah.
that's correct.
No, it does. It does.
Okay.
I mean, if you just look at the bottom line, right? Total fixed expense is going from $34 million to $38 million. And so it's a big
Yep.
jump.
Yep.
It's like 12% year over year, right? So I'm just trying to make sure we understand what's driving that and where there might be opportunities to manage that to a lower level of increase, right?
Yeah, and I think, there's a big jump in health insurance,
Yep.
right? That projection may be too high. We'll go through those debt service
So-
numbers
I
again.
have a question about if the health insurance number ends up getting adjusted or the OPEB number gets adjusted. Those are both in the joint accounts. So does that affect the town guideline number?
No,
Okay,
no. All right, so,
but that
It might
makes the
make-
pie bigger for everybody if these
Yes.
numbers go down.
Right.
Yeah,
potentially.
potentially.
Right.
Right,
It's-
right.
Somebody's paying less for, if the numbers go down, it's a
Right.
pickup somewhere, right?
All right, so on the next slide, this shows the, what the FinCom preliminary guideline looks like. So for fiscal '26, not, everything's balanced so far. If you look in the out years, you can see that, and what Anthony did here was just carry the FinCom guideline into the out years. So the town for fiscal '26 is 2.6, it's showing 2.6 throughout.
Every year. Yeah.
Every year. And so you can see the net result of that is the unused levy capacity is being held constant, and there's a little bit of additional capacity, if you will, a little bit of additional spending that could be allowed.
Yeah, in 27 on.
Yeah. And then just the final slide that I wanted to go through with you. So under the preliminary guideline, the 2.6% translates to an increase, a budget increase for the town of $851,386. We have done a lot of work on salary in the last year. We have renegotiated almost all of the union contracts. We've done a lot of great work, and I'm happy to talk to you about that at another time. We're not going to talk about that. We don't have the time this evening. But just looking at the increases in salary for fiscal '26, what is already baked into contracts, that's $568,000, 2.63%. That is steps, COLA, that's everything. To me, it is remarkable. If you go back and you look at what the town held for salary reserve for prior years, you will see numbers that are much bigger than that. So I'm really proud of the work that has been done, particularly Assistant Town Manager Jess Porter and our HR consultant Kimberly Crum, both of who are here this evening, have done a ton of work here. Really, really good work. The merit pool that we are holding right now is $274,000 or so. We're going to talk a little bit in another agenda item about that. But the merit, any merit is not added to base, but that's the amount. So if you add those two amounts together, that's essentially what our increase is. So the message that I want to communicate is we can't put forward a level service budget within that guideline. That doesn't mean we're not going to put together a budget within the guideline, because the town always puts a budget within the guideline. But if we are held to that guideline with the assumptions that are made with all of the other revenues, it will not be a level services budget.
So Carrie, just a question on the merit pool. So that's a new thing?
It is new for the current fiscal year.
Okay, yeah, so it's not something we spent before.
Not before fiscal '25. What we did spend before fiscal '25, well, let me back up. Our comp plan has always included COLA, steps, and merit. And the merit before fiscal '25 was added to base. Beginning in fiscal '25, merit is no longer added to base.
Right. So I'm trying to get at, like, so this merit pool, why is it incremental? So I get the salary increase. The salary increase for FY26, $568,000. That's incremental to FY25. That's an additional spend that you're going to contractually have to spend. If you have a merit pool already and you have a merit pool next year, I'm not sure why it's incremental year over year.
You just broke it out, right? I mean, it's not incremental new. It's just that the way you compensate, you've just broken it out because of the compensation program, right?
Yes.
So in years past, you just didn't make
Right.
this distinction.
But I guess my point is, okay, the budget's going to go up $851,000. right?
Yeah.
That I get, okay. 568 of that 851 is going to get eaten up essentially because I have these contractually required
Yes.
salary increases. But the merit pool isn't going to eat up into that 851 because you're paying merit pool last year, you're paying a merit pool this year. So my point is, 568 of the 851 is going to just directly go to an increase in costs, right? But I think the merit thing is different because it's just something you did last year, something you're going to do this year.
But you're just paying it out in a cash bonus versus it being part of your salary.
Yeah,
you're
but
saying that
I
generally-
get what you're saying. I don't,
Saying you
Yeah.
already
Yeah.
did it.
I'm not saying you already did it, so it's not a new thing. That's my
Right,
point.
right,
So
right,
that's all.
right.
It's just,
Right.
it's not a new thing.
Or maybe
Right.
what we're saying is this year's our merits are going to be this much more.
no,
Okay.
no,
then
it's
that's
not.
Right.
what she's
It's
saying.
not.
Right, so that's all I'm saying is, okay, so to your comment about level services, it's just, okay, I've got $851,000 in new money. I spend 568 of that on salary increases. I have another $280,000 for whatever, increased service, growth in inflation and other things or something.
So we will be back to you sometime in January to talk more about budget. We are likely to be issuing our budget packages to departments, the official budget package, sometime next week, by the end of next week. And departments then have a couple of weeks to put their request together. They, obviously, we do budget every year, they're aware of that. But they will not have their official packets until next week. We try to time it so we're working on capital, and then you get a break, and then we're working on operating budget.
So Carrie, help me understand something. Whatever this number turns out to be, based on the 2.6%, you're saying that a big portion of that 2.6 is already contractually, we're contractually bound, whatever that number is.
Yes.
And so you can't have a level service budget. So I guess I need to understand why. If what else will go up that's out of our control over the year over year, that would mean that we'd have to cut back services.
Well, utilities,
Uh-huh.
that's a big expense.
Yep.
The personnel costs are about 2/3 of our budget,
Right.
1/3
So you gotta-
is
yeah,
everything
so you have
else.
a
So
third that,
utilities,
Okay.
the cost of materials, that,
okay. And how much do we spend a year on consultants? And that would probably go up as well, just because of inflation. Do we spend a lot?
I'd have to go back, and
Okay.
I couldn't even,
Yeah, we'd have to, a closer look at that, I think would be really helpful to us to understand what exactly.
I think the other thing is, each year, things get added to scope that are not part of the original budget plan. Or the scope of something ends up being bigger than originally anticipated. And again, I'm thinking of Public Works, the addition of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, Giroux Park, White Pond, the costs of maintaining all of those assets. The bathrooms this year, it seems like we've talked quite a bit about, we've typically closed restrooms October 15. We budget for restrooms to be open until October 15. The weather is nicer now than it used to be. People want restrooms. We have, we end up bringing porta potties on. There's a cost to that wasn't in the budget. We figure out how to make it work and then try to budget for it the next year.
So can I just ask one question? This is a timing. So Carrie, when do you have to go back to the FinCom, or do you go back to FinCom again?
We are going back to them December 19th and talk to them about the likely impact of guidelines.
And we'll hear more on our meeting on the 16th? In advance of that, do we think?
If we have more to report,
Okay.
yes. It'll be a little bit of a scramble for us to even be ready for the 19th.
When does FinCom issue its final guideline? Is that the 19th as well?
The 19th or before the end of December. I don't know if they have another meeting.
Eric's
after
on the
that.
line. I wonder if I should know this as well.
I think the intent is the 19th.
Okay.
So I had one question, going back to the operating budget. Adding, you said that a lot of the departments are in good shape. Public Works is where you would add if you could. And the other thing I noticed in the narrative was more personnel needed for the new ambulance service, however, revenue would support that. Right, is that right?
Higher personnel expense because the paramedics are compensated at a higher rate, not additional headcount, but a
Right, higher expense, but it would be compensated for with the billing, with the higher fees.
Yes, the fees outpace the cost close to 2 to 1.
I thought there was something in there about FTEs going to a 24/7.
There was.
Something in the outer years,
There
in the
was.
outer years. It's
There
not for
was.
next year. It's sort of, this was the 5-year plan, right? So
Yeah.
over the
Yeah,
next
I
5
mean,
years,
so
it was a
if we're looking at Novo 40B, we're looking at the Thoreau 40B, depending on what happens at MCI Concord. Yes, if we have a significant increase in number of residential units, population, that, yes, that might warrant a need for additional staff.
Good. Any other questions? Good, we're good. Thank you, Carrie.
Good
That was-
presentation,
that
thank
was
you.
very helpful. The next item on our agenda is the chair's report. I have 4 things to talk about briefly. First of all, during our executive session that we had before our meeting tonight, the board voted to enter into negotiations for a 3-year contract for our town manager. Second thing I want to say is that after our November 18th forum on the residential tax exemption, I was contacted by several people who are interested in serving on a tax relief task force. So I am going to, and I believe that these people would be very good and very objective, and I think we could put together a balanced task force to once again look at tax relief. It will be our 3rd time looking at this, but I think we can go back and take another swing at it and see what are things that are available to us and what might work best for the town. So I am going to bring a draft of a charge to the select board probably in the January timeframe. So I just wanted to kind of give you a heads up on that, and we can discuss it at that time. Okay. The next thing I wanted to mention is tomorrow we're having our First Amendment training and open meeting law training here in the townhouse at 3 o'clock, 3 to 4 o'clock. This is training on First Amendment. I talked about this earlier, how we've got to respect people's First Amendment rights at the same time trying to maintain civil discourse. And it's a fine line, and we need to know how to do that. So we're having training tomorrow on that. We will also have some training on open meeting law. I think the First Amendment is going to become even more important going forward. We've noticed a change in discourse, so being trained on how to handle that appropriately, I think, will be very helpful. So I'm opening that up to all boards and committees, actually anybody in town, really. It's here at the townhouse. If you want to come, it'll be an hour. I think it'll be an hour well spent. And then finally, the chair's breakfast on December 18th is going to follow a new format. It's going to be bistro style. So instead of coming and having to do a report out, you can just come and hang out and talk to whoever you want to talk to and eat the food that we have. So December 18th will be, hopefully, it'll be a good time. I heard somebody's going to bring a guitar, but that could have been, I don't know. We'll see if that really happens or not. So I hope, please try to make it on December 18th. Okay. Next thing is the liaison reports. We all submitted written liaison reports, but now I want to open it up for, do any of the members here have questions for other members, what they read in the liaison report?
No, I read them all. I think it's working really well, by the
Do
way,
you?
just
Yeah.
documenting the comments, yeah.
Do you?
I think
Okay,
it's
good.
helpful, yeah.
And for people in the public, you can go online and look at the packet and read the liaison reports. But I do have a question for you, Wendy.
Okay.
The Novo, the ZBA hearing on Novo,
Yeah.
what's happening with Novo? Are they What,
So there was, do you remember, as part of the project, there was a proposal originally thinking about a garage being proposed?
well, it was supposed to be underground parking.
Right, but this was, well, first of all, there was no presentation at the planning board. It was just a delayed review. There was a request for parking relief. But it was, I should pull it up. It's actually in the writing. But it's been delayed until January 9th.
Okay. Okay, so people who are interested in
People were
Novo.
interested, because originally it was going to be
Do
delayed
they have a
to
sorry, do they have a
December.
specific proposal for their relief of required parking?
It's not, I don't, it's, if there's a specific, it's on the website for the
Okay, got
ZBA. Or this is actually it's on the ZBA.
Okay, so
And I'll
there's-
follow up
Okay,
in more detail if I have it. but
because
there really
that,
wasn't much
that
more.
project originally had underground parking,
Yep.
and there was no parking garage as part of it. So there's
No.
been a switch. For people who are interested in the Novo project, seems like the developers are making some kind of a shift in parking. So I just wanted to make people aware of that.
And I just want to be, in that, I wish I could bring up the report.
When is
The
that, Wendy?
address,
Ja-
it's
January 9th.
January 9th,
What the-
great.
I just said, I'm looking at your
And
notes.
what's the address?
300 to 310 Baker
It's
Ave?
300,
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's the Novo.
Yeah.
Okay,
it's not
great.
292.
Good, thank you.
Sorry.
That's fine. Okay. Next item on our agenda is to discuss an extension for the contract negotiations with Comcast. And I have Jason Bulger as the presenter. Is Jason, you're online?
He's there.
I am. Can you hear me?
We can.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair and Select Board members. I want to just give a very brief update on the process that we've gone through and where we are, and then end with hopefully a motion to extend the time that we have to issue a denial. We've been negotiating with Comcast for almost a year now. Terry Ackerman, myself, and Sue Buskey, who is a consultant that we have hired, who has negotiated many of these, including the one in Carlisle, have been meeting about every 3 weeks on average with Comcast to discuss this. Sue has said that of all of the negotiations she's been on, this one has felt very smooth to her, and she's pleased with the progress that we've made. We are, discussing many aspects that are in the contract and use the existing license agreement as a base. And as you know, we've taken all the input that was provided to us at the information sessions and the survey to try to advocate for what the community was looking for in a new license agreement. We feel like we've made significant progress, and we're almost to the point where we're going to ask council to begin reviewing it. But we have a fixed period of time that we need to respond. The DTC says that within a certain period of time from Comcast issuing an offer, we have to either reject it or accept it. And so what we're doing here is just asking the DTC to give us another 120 days before we make that decision. We've done 2 before, and this we hope will be our last one. And so that's really all I have to say, but I'm happy to answer questions if anybody has them.
Great, thank you, Jason. Very straightforward. Any questions from the board?
No, do we need a motion?
We do.
All right, so I've moved to approve a 120-day extension for the contract negotiations with Comcast, set to expire December 20th, 2024.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Very good. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
I don't want to see you again for this.
You're
Well,
done.
we are going to see him soon for
Not for this.
learning all about the contract and voting it. It's
Oh,
going to
that'd be
be
good.
good. Yep.
That week.
I'm looking forward
That
to
was
seeing you, Jason, for that.
Thank you.
Okay, and next on the agenda is all of the licenses that we have to renew. Shannon.
All right, so you all have a memo in your packet. This is just for the first batch of the annual license renewals. I would say we're close to halfway with these ones, but these are for the select board licenses such as Class 1 and Class 2 licenses, Common Vic, liquor licenses, tour guide licenses. So these are the ones that have been submitted and reviewed by relevant departments. Can answer any questions you have.
Great. So we do this every year.
Right.
Right, very good.
Do you think that the second batch will be at our next meeting?
Yeah, it will be.
And then, do you think that'll be it, or are there maybe going to be a few stragglers in January?
Last year, there were a couple of stragglers,
Right.
but they're often like tour guide licenses.
Yeah.
And I mean, the liquor license ones are very strict, those renewals. Those ones will always be on
Right,
time.
because
but-
January 1st is.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, there might be a couple stragglers with tour guides,
Okay.
but I don't anticipate
Great,
any
thank
big
you.
ones.
Motion?
Any other questions? Nope, we're
Are
good.
these all the liquor licenses in town?
This list is not complete at the
Okay,
moment,
sorry. All right.
but it will be at your next meeting.
Got it. Thanks.
You said this is almost half, though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
Good.
All right, so I move to approve the Select Board licenses for 2025 annual renewal, batch 1.
Do I have a second?
second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Thank you, Shannon. Next up is an update from the Town Meeting Study Committee. Eric?
Hi, good evening. This is Eric Moore.
Hi.
I provided an update in the packet. Hopefully, people have been able to take a look at that. Our top line ask, and welcome your questions, of course. Our top line ask is we voted in favor of a home rule petition for allowing Concord to have remote participation and voting in town meeting. There was an article in last year's warrant, citizen petition, to the same effect, and we're hopeful that the Select Board this year will move to support an article from us. We don't have the means to put an article on the warrant ourselves as a committee, and so to get an article on the warrant could be as a citizen petition, or it could come from the Select Board.
You're talking about remote participation?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that's a question, it's an ask. And then the second piece of that is the project of a home rule petition for remote participation and voting could take several years. I think what we learned from the effort last year is that coordinating across multiple towns may be beneficial. I'm not really sure how to organize an effort. I mean, clearly we can put together something for the warrant with your approval, but the project of coordinating across towns and then looking at an effort over potentially multiple years is beyond the scope of the committee, and I'm not sure how to sort of organize for that. We'd like to see it happen, but we're not sure how to get it done, and so I'm seeking the Select Board's guidance on that as well, please.
Do you want to give us, you've got time, so you want to give us a little background on what your committee did and?
Oh, sure.
Rather than go right?
Oh, sure, yeah, and also want to be mindful, Amalia McCaffrey also has something to present as well.
That's right.
So I'd
But-
like to-
yeah, Just tell
Sure.
us about your
Oh,
process.
so big picture,
and-
yeah, sure,
Yeah.
sorry.
That's okay.
We were charged last year at town meeting. That came with a pretty thorough description from our appointing authority, the moderator. And also, as a result of what happened at town meeting last year, 3 of the citizen petitions, remote participation, what we call the Australian ballot, and clickers, were also moved to our committee for consideration. So over the, I guess we've been going for, since May. We spent some time identifying what we believe to be the driving issues for town meeting in terms of affecting experience and participation. We identified a mission statement in terms of what we want to improve. We put time into putting together a survey, which I hope everybody did, and analysis of that survey. And then we put real time into this fall, the real consideration of the different citizen petitions. And the outcomes there are, well, first of all, the survey really strongly supported nearly 80% survey support for remote participation. Also a very high level of support, around 80%, plus or minus, for clickers, electronic voting. As a committee, we approved, we concluded, and the language is in the update, but we concluded that clickers would help at town meeting, specifically in the area where votes need to be counted accurately, and when there's a move for a private vote or a secret ballot. In that case, clickers are just faster with a secret ballot. With remote participation, again, a strong belief that I'll say, in my words, that a future of town meeting is to be able to provide, I'll say, sort of a secondary experience of remote participation. That we can have a Zoom town meeting where you can vote is I think, a reflection of how work culture has changed, and we believe that it would make town meeting a lot more accessible for people, for people to be able to participate. So, big picture.
That's good.
Okay.
I wanted to talk a little bit, before we get into the three specific things, which is, one is the clickers, which you don't really need our help for that, right? One is remote participation, which you're asking for help, and the other is off the table. I wanted to talk about, basically you were saying that your solutions were under 4 broad categories. One was streamlining, one was accessibility, one was meeting culture, and one was communication. So let's talk for a little bit about what we could do, or what we can do around that, as opposed to going right to the practical solution. So I think for streamlining, you're talking about the clickers.
Clickers are part of it. I think,
Yeah.
Expanding the consent calendar, or looking at a broader consent
Yep.
calendar to begin
So-
with, is
okay.
a piece of that.
Okay.
I think in some cases how we might look at how the moderator might look at time capping
Okay.
discussion of certain articles
Okay.
is a piece of that.
Okay.
So, having less to deliberate over, having deliberation move faster, the 2 pieces there.
Okay.
I think the third piece might be in terms of how much time the moderator allocates for questions and statements, pro and con.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think where I'm really going with this is, the 4th thing you have is just communication. Frankly, that was kind of puzzling to me, because I always thought that we do so much to communicate to the town, as far as hearings that we have. We publish that on the cover of FinCom. We have so many ways that we communicate, but apparently they're just not working. Or help us understand how we could do a better job of that. So did you get any things from your task force that would be specific? Because it's puzzling to me.
We're still looking at it. I think, a piece of it is knowing where to look, right? I think if you know it's there and you know where to look, you can go find it. And in a way, the experience of discovering information on the website is not so good.
Well, the FinCom
Yeah.
report gets mailed to every single house,
Sure.
and the
sure,
hearings are on the cover. So
Sure.
really, like I said, I'm puzzled. So
Sure.
what do you
so
think? What is the?
Yeah.
What's,
It's multidimensional. It's yeah. I mean, I think, for example, I had a conversation with Eric Dahlberg, the FinCom chair.
Yep.
And, the FinCom report is thorough, but it's technical. And so for someone who may not have any grounding at all in municipal finance, but looks at their household finances, I suspect that a version of that report that is is at a different level might be a more effective communication tool. But I don't know. I mean, it's a thing that I'm looking forward to talking more with the FinCom about.
If I could, sorry, just so Cameron McKenna here, and I am the liaison to the town meeting committee, but one of the, and I think there's done a lot of really good work here. So one of the things, just for instance, in the forum, talking to somebody from Westford who came over to participate, and they talked about, they actually produce a video every year, right? So it's just another mechanism. It doesn't solve all the world's problems, but it's a video that people can watch that says, look, here are the articles, and here's what is contained. So it's just,
another medium.
it's another medium,
Okay.
because some people will read the book
Yep.
and some people won't, but they might click on a 5-minute video and say, hey, this is what's on this year's town meeting. So I think, I don't want to preempt, because I think the committee is still going through some of those suggestions.
Yeah.
And I think has worked its way through the issue of clickers, and then the issue of remote participation. And then I think the third bucket is really in these all other items that are going to potentially improve town meeting, right? Which you see in the packet, there's some survey weightings of what people responded with. But I think that's where, to get into a bit more detail on, like, what else can we do?
Okay.
So I agree with Eric that one of the problems is the website And I was really happy to hear Carrie say that it's one of her goals. The staff is going to be working with the vendor, I forgot the name of the vendor now, to revamp that whole website. Because that's been an ongoing problem where, let's say you want to get that video cam. Well, you go in and Google town of Concord, it's not going to
Right.
come up. You have to know what you're doing. So there's got to be a
Yep.
different way to organize to find the information.
Yep.
And then I had a couple of questions. I'm in favor of clickers, but I know some people are not. And what their main objection seems to be is they want, they think town meeting should be public and they want to see how their neighbors are voting. So is your proposal for clickers for every question or only the ones that we're going to need, a whole paper count for?
Sure. As a committee, we haven't made a determination. I
Okay.
think that my sense is that we don't want to impose a solution that constrains the moderator's judgment about when to use clickers.
Okay, fair enough. But
Yeah.
I think we should be very clear that, I think we might win over some of the people who are opposed to clickers. I think are imagining it's for every single vote, and that's not necessarily true. What I like about them is when you have a very cumbersome paper ballot counting, and you have to stop town meeting for half an hour.
Exactly.
That is really frustrating to me, because I don't want to go home by then, and, so the clicker would be really good for that, but I don't think we need for every question. But anyway, my other question was on the home rule petition. Were you talking about, I guess clickers are already permitted by state law?
Correct,
Yeah.
yes.
All right,
So
so for
it
the home
only-
rule,
yeah.
we only need that for the remote participation
Exactly.
part of it. Got
Exactly.
it. Yeah, a lot of work, tremendous amount of work, good report.
And I guess just a question on the home rule petition. Did you talk to Wayland?
I did speak with Wayland, yeah. And so last year's warrant article, I wasn't part of that process.
Yeah. I assume somebody on the committee followed up.
The proposed language for a home rule petition from Concord last year was almost word for word identical to what Wayland had petitioned. So in other words, there's an effort to sort of put the same ask before the legislature, Concord equals Wayland.
Right, no, I remember that. And
Yeah.
I guess in those same comments, when you talk about there's still a lot of operational, there's a lot of cost, there's a lot of work to be done
Sure.
to do that, to truly understand. And if you're looking for us to collaborate with other towns, I can just imagine it's going to take a long time to sort of figure this out. Are you looking for some home rule petition for this year's town warrant?
To move the issue forward most aggressively, it would be that we'd have an article on the warrant this year that gives the select board explicit permission to file a home rule petition, and who knows how long that would take to come through.
So it's
Yeah.
just an authorization to have
It's
the...
just an
okay,
authorization.
all right.
And my ask
That's
from the
helpful to
select
know.
board is to sponsor this article this year. We can write an article for the warrant and come back to you, and you could make a motion to allow it on the warrant. We could file a citizen petition, but my belief is that this effort will have the most, will benefit the most from a select board endorsement, even in the sponsorship stage.
I guess I'm kind of curious to, the last year's article was actually the language from Wayland, basically, but
Yeah.
are you looking to have someone craft that language for this year's warrant article? Really, you're just saying, let's put together a home rule petition and authorize the select board to work on it, but it would ultimately have to go back to town meeting.
It will have
if
to
we
come
took
from
that
town
approach.
meeting, just to get something on the
Right,
warrant.
this is just to start, okay.
Yeah,
to
yeah.
get it-
Even if we took
Just to
what we
get it
had
going.
last year, even if we took what we had last year and put on this year's warrant, that would be a basic ask.
But that would be very specific language for a home rule petition. I guess I'm just not feeling like we're ready for the language, but
No, we're not.
moving
We're not
it
ready to
forward
vote
and
on it
starting
either.
No,
to-
no, there's no vote.
But no, I'm just trying to understand what the ask really is.
It's a recommendation.
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
So You're having some more forums in town to get more feedback, right? I
Yeah.
think you're doing a first Friday with the league.
Yeah.
Are you having a public forum, another public forum?
We had two, part of which
Yeah,
you were at.
right.
We don't have anything scheduled yet for more forums.
Okay,
I think, I'm looking at the timeline for the warrant.
yep.
And,
We have until February to.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I do know that when I talk with people, one of the concerns people have with some of these changes is that it encourages single people who have single issue voters. It encourages or enables that, and we lose the richness of people being involved in all of town government and understanding everything and how things integrate with each other. So that's a real concern that I've heard, and I'm wondering, did you look at representative town government or another way to? Did you explore that at all?
We have explored representative town meeting.
Yeah.
I think the consensus or our finding was that it doesn't help. The people who currently attend open town meeting are likely to be the people who would be running for representative town meeting. The workload of representative town meeting is actually greater than the workload for open town meeting. And our concern was that we would have a hard time finding people to run, and that we'd have the same issues about people not being able to sort of fully participate.
Yep.
Right.
And, plus the whole issue of now the accountability falls into an electoral cycle of 3 years as opposed to how we are today.
We have time, so I'm going to open this up for a few minutes if anybody has any public comment that they'd like to make on this topic. We're not going to vote tonight on whether the select board's going to sponsor an article. We will need more input and more discussion, but I appreciate you coming here and the work that you've done. But
And can we hear feedback from the moderator if,
well, I'm
if-
asking her. If
if
I'm opening
you
it up
have any?
to see if you have anything. I'm opening it up. If anybody has any comments they'd like to make, we have time.
Talking from here?
There's a
No,
microphone.
you need a. That would. Yes. Oh yeah. Don't worry.
So the committee has done just a ton of work here, and I'm very impressed by and grateful for the process that they've gone through. And I've thrown tons of information at them from various places, and they've looked at all of that, and then they've gathered their own information, and they've talked to other towns, surveyed voters. So, the survey results that we got were about the same as what other surveys in town have received lately, but still, it's only like, was it 1,000? About 1,000 voters, a little less than 1,000 voters. So we've got, 14,000 registered voters. So you still are left with the question of whether that's a representative sample or not a representative sample. But I don't know how, I don't know any way to reach everybody and get people more engaged in responding and giving us their thoughts. So I think they've done what they could do. With the recommendation that the committee is making to the select board that we be on the frontier of remote participation in town meeting, it really is a frontier, and we don't know yet if it could really work, how it would work, what the technology is, what the management is, what, how you secure votes, how there's so much work to be done to flesh that out. But I think the feeling of the committee is that, why not be on the cutting edge of that if what people want is more access, not less. They want more opportunity, more easily to participate, not less. And they look at representative town government as less opportunity. And
Right.
they like the idea of open meeting. They want it to be easier. They want to do it from their sofas, and while the kids are over there. Or while they don't have to drive at night. So, I think they've, and they carefully considered the Australian ballot question. I think they've done a good job talking through and really fully vetting the questions on the 3 citizen petitions that were referred to them for a kind of full thrashing out. And the electronic voting one, if you look at it as streamlining, it really does streamline if you have to count a vote, no question about it. Open question whether it streamlines this is pretty quick, if there is, right, pretty quick. So I don't really think you save any time there. Certainly you'd save a boatload of time over a secret ballot if the meeting felt that there should be a secret ballot. So, and I think they've still got more talking to do about what their recommendation will be to the moderator on how and when to use it.
Yeah.
And I know we'll hear from town staff about what technical and budget options may be there. Is here for the town manager's budget presentation, and there's clearly not a lot of fat in the budget for additional things. I'm totally thrilled with the work the committee is doing, and I think that it's been responsive to concerns that have been voiced by voters over the past couple of years, and certainly some improvements are going to come out of this.
Thank you. Thank you, Carmen. I've got a hand up. I'm sorry, that woman's,
Oh, there's a hand in the back here.
yeah,
The
but,
back.
yeah, but
So
we
sorry,
I'm
somebody's
going to
got-
go online first. Dean, I'll be right there.
I think you're talking about me.
We are,
Is
we
it
are.
okay to
Can you,
speak? I'm Katie Bresnick. I'm at 256 Hunters Ridge Road. I'm on the town meeting study committee, but I'm speaking on behalf of myself.
okay,
I wanted to express for myself the importance of having the option in the future of doing remote participation in town meeting. As a parent of 2 small toddlers, it's almost impossible to attend town meeting. I'm usually watch from my couch at home, but I'm able to vote maybe one night. My husband and I can't get a babysitter for 3 nights in a row, and we'd have mayhem in our house if we were to do that. And I think remote participation would give a lot of younger folks in town the opportunity to participate in town government and become more involved, so maybe they are able to be in person for 3 days in a row in the future, if that's what that looks like. But I know there's some concern about single issue voters. Right now, that probably looks like more of an issue when people just can't make it in person, so they can only prioritize their time and attend for, let's say, one specific item on the warrant. But allowing remote participation will allow more people to become involved and listen to the whole meeting, and maybe not participate in just the one item they would have time to attend in person. So I think there's multiple ways to look at it, and I think it's really important that we pursue this.
thank you, Katie. Dean, do you want to speak?
Dean Banfield, 73 Walden Terrace. I want to commend the Town Meeting Study Committee for all the work they've done. I'm very impressed with the characterization across the various vectors of streamlining, accessibility, meeting culture, communications, et cetera. Town meeting is an imperfect thing. We know that, and that's why we're looking to find ways to make it better. But I think that the thing that we want to be keeping front of mind through all of these theoretically improved things along these vectors is, to what degree is town meeting reflective of what we'll just call the will of the town? And in what ways, as we change to make it different, to make it more accessible, or to make it easier for people to, collect themselves, single issue voting, et cetera, to what degree does that change the way it expresses the will of the town, and is it more or less representative of that? So that's a kind of deeper problem that I'm not sure we are thinking necessarily about as we address these smaller problems of, can I get to the meeting? Can I vote? Am I allowed to do it? Can we have more people in it? And how does that affect the way in which the town's will is expressed through this vehicle? So that's the thing I want everybody to keep in mind. Thanks.
Thank you, Dean. I've got, Eric, do you want to make a comment? Please.
Eric Van Loon, I'm a member of the study committee and a former moderator. I wanted to just underscore a little bit the rationale for our committees asking the select board to be the sponsors taking the lead in this. And I think there's a couple of different factors. Obviously, the pandemic and Zoom have transformed everybody's lives, including this meeting. And we found that the largest percentage of people who responded to a question responded on the question of remote participation. Second, it was 4-1, 80%. Third, in the I think it was 61 pages type, single-spaced pages of comments that we received. There were more comments about that than virtually anything else. And last, the vehemence, the forcefulness of the comments were strong, and it was parents, it was elderly people, it was people who travel for work, it was a lot of different people. And I think that one of the themes that we saw as well, that a lot of people are under the impression that this is just some archaic thing that Concord does to keep to a tradition, and they don't really understand that it's not consistent with state law, that we really have to do a lot of work. And I think that the select board taking the lead in saying, we have to go, we'll raise that fact up. And I think second, the moral authority of you all doing it rather than, as Eric said, a citizen petition or something else. And obviously you're not going to vote on this tonight, but
Right.
Wanting to say just a little bit more of that. We are aware of and are wrestling with the question that Dean raised of representativity. But I think that, at least from my perspective, having been moderator for a number of years, I think that because of the way Zoom has transformed our lives, that there is a deeper dissatisfaction with town meeting than there was before, because there wasn't the Zoom alternative that everybody knew. And I just think it would be helpful for democracy in Concord, for the voters that feel strongly, to know that the select board also has heard this, is making it a priority. And last,
And bringing it to the
town meeting's not till June. If one did nothing and just wait till then, well, then you're in the summer months and all. And we were thinking that you all could do something such as asking town council to review the language, make sure that there's no additional
Right.
comments, and in other ways, getting the process started.
Okay. Thank you, Eric. We'll put it on a future agenda. Thank you. I'm going to move back now to the clickers, and we have some more information about clickers from the technology and from a more practical point of view. So do you want to introduce yourself and tell us?
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Amalia McCaffrey. I work for the Town of Concord. I'm the Chief Information Officer, and the purpose of my presentation is really to talk about the electronic voting system that was a recommendation of the town meeting study committee. So, next slide. So some of the things that we're going to cover is really just a short background to give you sort of how I got here. Some system considerations that and discussions that we had over the last several weeks regarding the electronic clickers. Some decision points that we have to look at as we sort of move forward on this initiative. And then I created a very notional timeline, and I really want to emphasize notional because that's really just to give you a guide of how long the process would take if we wanted to proceed to actual implementation. So the dates are really notional. It's just to sort of give you a timeline for what each of those events would look like in the time frame. And obviously, you know, the reason that we're here is to talk about, you know, how do we improve voting participation, and that's sort of the goal. So just a quick background. So obviously, the beginning of November, Eric, you know, the town, the committee recommended the use of electronic voting devices. That was sent over to me, and I met with the town clerk, and we did some really preliminary initial research to sort of gauge what was out there, some options that we had, what other communities were using, just to sort of get an idea of like what this would look like. And then I took some time to meet with both Eric and Carmen to just go over some of the background that they had so that I had that as I was sort of proceeding forward. Next slide. So some of the things, and I tried to sort of summarize this into broad categories. As I do more research, obviously these are going to expand, but just to sort of give a summation, some of the three things that sort of came to be as I looked at different reports, different communities that are using the electronic system. So ease of use was one that was was a theme that was across all, and not just for the residents, but also if the town had bought the system, how easy it was for the IT departments to implement, monitor it, maintain it, utilize it, stand it up, implement it, sort of categorize that as ease of use. Security obviously is something that we absolutely have to look at any type of system that we deploy, even if it's a very simple type of technology system where you don't have a ton of security, but we do need to look at two sort of sections of that. First, the data protection, and then the system integrity, right? So I sort of categorize those in two different areas. And then obviously another theme that I saw across some of the reports was sort of the audit trail, to give people a sense of, you know, of transparency, accountability with these systems. So I think these, while it's not all encompassing, I think these are the three major areas that I sort of picked up from what we looked at. Next slide. So just to sort of summarize the decision points as we are starting to move forward, it was clear there were like four major areas that I sort of categorized. Purchase versus lease was certainly the first one. Are we going to invest in an initial purchase, which there's obviously long-term costs, or are we going to look at a shorter-term version, which would be leasing these devices to sort of see how we wanted to utilize them in the future? The device quantity also made a huge impact in the cost of the project, because, for example, just to give you some rough numbers, please don't quote just initial. Looking at purchase, if you have 500 clickers, and these are 2024 prices, so they're relatively new. 500 costs us about $19,000 to field. 1,600 devices would cost us about $50,000 to deploy. Now that's the purchase of the system. Now for rentals, about 600 devices would average about $14,000. Now the difference between the leasing and the purchasing is with the leasing it's more than just leasing the devices. You would get the rental equipment. They would come and set up all of the equipment that's required at the location. It would cover the cost for 3 to 4 days worth of running the equipment, and then obviously the support during the meetings, and then the tear down and taking them back. But then if you went up to 800 devices, you're probably looking at about $17,000 to $18,000 for that initial investment. So there's a lot to sort of consider when you talk about purchase versus lease, and there's a lot to determine how many devices do we want to rent or purchase. And also it appears that there's about 3 to 4 vendors that kind of work in this space, and we also need to consider, depending on what we purchase, if we don't decide to purchase, let's say, 1,300 would be our base number based upon some of the highest attendance for our meetings. If we didn't want to purchase 1,300 and we only wanted to purchase 800, we would have to borrow the devices from a community that has like devices like ours. So we would have to sort of consider that when we look at the purchase or the rental. And then obviously, like Carrie mentioned, the funding source. Right now, we don't have anything identified in the budget for it, but we'd have to identify where that where the budget would allow for that. And then finally, the implementation timeline. And for me, that's something that we really need to sort of consider and talk about, because if we go quickly to field something and then the fielding is really not well thought out and well planned, that could sort of taint the experience of the clickers and not really give you a good representation of what the devices are doing for your town meeting. So I think it's very, very important that when we look at an implementation timeline, that we are realistic about how we're going to implement, so that we're aware going forward. And training is also another thing. We need to make sure that, number one, we have that the vendor will do a good job doing the initial training for the residents as they start to use. And then also, if for our training, for the town clerk's office and for people that are going to be supporting the system, we need to make sure that they're well trained, because we certainly do not want to be learning as we're going. So that's a really important piece of the puzzle. So leading into that, my next slide again is a notional timeline. I know I've heard that I think there was recommendation to maybe use it at our next town meeting. So when you look at some of the things that have to happen, I sort of broke it down into 4 categories. We obviously there's more research to be done and certainly more planning to be done, and ensuring that our procurement, we do it in proper procurement. So I would say we need at least 2 months to do that. And then we talk about vendor selection, where we review the vendor options and decide which one to go with. And then an implementation window that gives us enough time to work through any potential issues that we'd have, so that we're not really under the wire and we have, a month or 2 to go through that. And then obviously the launch and the implementation, and then an evaluation period, so we can take some, real lessons learned about what worked, what didn't work. And so this timeline really lends to a lease option. For myriad of reasons, we kind of, try before you buy type of thing, and really see what worked, what didn't work, get feedback from both the town, town departments that are using it, the residents. So I think, that would be the final phase. So like I said, just to give you an idea of what the timeline would look like with no actual hard dates, but, we're looking at probably, we need to decide in the next, 30 days, so that we have enough time to sort of meet the June deadline.
Sorry, decide what? Decide what?
Yes, if we're going to go ahead and press.
Oh, why would we not?
Money, logistics,
Budget,
operations,
so I guess.
But why would we not move? So
Well, it's not our decision. It's
correct, but why would we not move forward to do everything we possibly can to make it happen?
So I think the first thing we would need to look at, really the budget would sort of derive what option we would go with, right?
Amalia is the person who will implement it. She's not really the decision makers, whether we're going to do it or not.
Who is the decision
But
maker?
who's deciding?
Is
I
it
guess.
Carmen, or is it the select board?
No, it's not the select board. I know that for a fact. We decide whether we want to sponsor an article for the remote participation,
Okay.
which we will talk about. But as far as the clickers go, I would imagine that would be based on conversations between the town meeting study committee and the moderator. Do I understand that process right? Eric? No?
Actually, I think it's a budget question.
Okay, it's a budget question.
Well, thanks.
There you go. I tried to help you.
So, we have about $100,000 in the town's budget, in the town's guideline budget, to fund town meeting and the associated costs. And we have $95,000 worth of expenses. So-
Not including this.
Not including this. So if this is something that there is consensus to move forward, we will figure out how to fund it.
Can we use ARPA funds?
We have some small amount of ARPA on the table, and that would be the first place that I would be
We were
taking
going to
another
talk about
look.
ARPA next meeting, actually, right?
Potentially, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would like to see a way that we could fund it. I would support trying it with the lease.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I would
let's-
support a lease,
Yeah, I definitely want to.
as far as ARPA funding.
It's a matter of money and timeline. And,
Yeah,
you know,
I mean, and I know I'm not trying to be difficult, but I don't want us to wait and not start to plan like we're going to do it.
Right.
As I guess sort of my
Yeah.
point, because then it becomes, let's meet again, let's talk again. Geez, is this really something now it's getting too late and we don't know if we have time. And that's my point is like, let's move ahead, understanding I don't have the money. It's got to come. Carrie's got to find it, right? And can we go? Let's try to find the money and let's try to make this happen.
If there is consensus that this is the direction that we want to move, I'd rather just start tomorrow moving in this direction.
Yes.
I think I would be remiss in pointing out the fact that people who are tracking budget by specific account code, that this is an example of how we are pivoting to meet emerging needs. So I just, exclamation point, thank you. So I wouldn't expect to bring this back to the board, and if ARPA funds are the only funds, we'd make a note the next time we talk.
So I
about
think you have a
ARPA.
sense of the board that we would approve,
Yes.
we would support ARPA funds, some ARPA funds for a lease. Right? Great.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
And then.
And support putting together some kind of budget plan. I mean, if somebody had to get laid off or whatever, I might not vote for it, but if it's, 5,000 from ARPA and 5,000 from this town meeting line and whatever, and it gets pieced together, sounds like, let's see the plan.
And then the second.
Is it the consensus of the board that you want to see a funding plan before we move forward with this?
I don't need to.
Not for
That's
me.
not-
No, I just meant a way.
You want to know how we fund it, but not.
Ultimately, but
Yes.
yes.
Yeah, I want to
but I don't
know
want
if
the
we
work.
can fund it, if there's a way to fund it, I would support it.
I think there is a way.
Right.
I think
but
we're just saying,
We're saying, Carrie,
Just do it.
find us a way.
Yeah.
yeah.
We
Yeah,
want
I
to
mean,
proceed.
personally, I'm not,
Pending this.
buy lease, to me, it's whatever makes the most sense, right? But I would
just-
want us to move
I
forward.
just wanted to make sure because I thought I was hearing two different things, so.
Fine, that's fine.
Okay.
That's good. Okay, and as far as the remote participation, we'll bring that up again at a subsequent meeting, and we've got time, because the warrant doesn't close until February something. But we'll, don't worry, we're good at deadlines. Eric, do you want to say something else? Go ahead.
Well, thank you, first of all. Thank you for the presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Amalia. Very helpful.
Thank you. Is there anything further that if you'll let us know if you need something more from us?
Well, what I would like is
Yeah.
more ideas about better communication.
Oh, for sure. I mean about remote participation.
Yeah, I would, because I don't want to just leave it with, we addressed the 3 articles that you had last year, but what are some other things?
Yeah.
And communication to me is, like I said, it's so puzzling to me.
Yeah, me
How do
too.
we do a better job of that?
Okay.
What, I would love you to come back and talk about communication improvements, and maybe that's a public forum, but there were also a lot of comments and concerns for individuals who are disabled, and why don't we have a Harvey Wheeler plan set up? And so if you can address those type of questions,
Good.
that would be helpful, actually, to hear
Thank you.
more about
Great.
from.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
And I think there's also, like on page 84 of the packet, I mean, the survey gives a weighting to some things that are other items to improve town meeting, and some of them may need some discussion. For instance, the number one thing was, people said they wanted to see was scheduling high-interest agenda items on a single night, right? I'm just saying, like,
Yeah,
that's
no,
worthy
I'm
of some
sure-
discussion,
Yeah, no,
right?
I'm sure the committee's still
Yeah.
discussing it.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
Right, that's,
Thank you.
Yeah,
okay, thank you. Thank you very much for all the work you've done and all the people that are here.
it's a lot of work. I read through some of those comments, and they're very, very
They're
clear.
good. Okay, moving on. The next thing is a CPC update. Mr. Flint.
Thank you, Mary. I'm Burton Flint, Chair of the CPC. In the meeting materials, I provided some numbers. what I can do, if you like, is I can run through the particular projects, but the bottom line is this year's funding requests, if we were to approve all of the funding requests, are at a total of $1,505,500.
Right.
Where we are in the process of reviewing that is we haven't voted to fund any particular project formally, but we're steering towards supporting at least 6 of the 7 projects. We just had some follow-on questions for one of them. I'll touch on that. This year, the total funds available from this year's funding cycle is $1,895,956. So actually significantly less than the total grants requested. And we have some pretty sizable reserve funds as well. So, and the numbers that I provided on the day before, on Wednesday, have actually changed a little bit because with town staff, I dug into the numbers a little bit. They hadn't identified some of the funds that had been returned from projects where the money came back to us.
Giroux is missing, right?
Yeah. So I believe the number that we had for undesignated fund balances was $421,000. It's actually $1,430,000. So there's a pretty big difference. I haven't had the chance to dig into those latest numbers because I got that memo maybe 3 hours ago, and so I haven't had a chance to follow up with the town accountant on that. We also have other reserves of $250,000 designated for open space. So all told, with the projected surcharge amount of $1,581,000 for this year, that's a projected tax surcharge, plus the state match of about 17.6% of $277,000, and interest of $36,000. We've got about $3,146,000. So that's in excess, or just about twice what this year's fund requests are. So that's the overview on the total numbers. I'll just running through does anybody have any questions about any particular projects?
So you've got $3.146 million of money available. Some of it's restricted to a certain category, right?
$250,000 is, for open space, but otherwise it's undesignated.
Okay, I thought there was 240 for housing, because that was the Giroux give back.
I followed up with town staff about that today. When that came out of general funds towards a housing project, and the law says it gets returned to the general fund when it comes back. I was under the impression because it was granted to housing, it went back into housing.
Oh, yeah.
But that's what I was told today. So, yeah. So even though it was designated for a housing project, because it wasn't coming out of a housing designated reserve, it goes back into the undesignated reserve.
But it's still
Undesignated
CPC.
for CPC, though.
Yeah,
Yes.
but it's
Not
in
the
the broader
general
bucket.
fund,
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
Yeah,
No,
okay.
Can be
it's
used
all
for-
CPC's budget.
Okay.
Okay, so it's
Broader.
unrestricted.
Okay.
Got it. Okay.
So I had a question. It seems like we don't have a lot of requests this year, relatively speaking. Do you have any theory why that is?
It's probably a small sample size. I mean, I think we went from 19 total requests last year to 7 this year.
Yeah, why do you think?
I don't know. We did the same sort of public reach out in terms
Yep.
of publishing a letter in the bridge, talking about getting applications
Yeah.
in, and the same types of things along those lines. There were, generally we get a small number of non-town requests from nonprofits and the like, or other organizations in town. That's a small number. The number of town requests was reduced by probably over half. Very few natural resources requests, for example. So the very large bulk of it is for housing this year.
Yeah, it just seems really odd because there's a lot of needs out there. There's never enough budget for anything, so just.
First time ever.
Yeah, well, no, it happened once before.
Sorry.
Last year, we actually were slightly overfunded as well, and overfunded, but well, we were overprescribed, and we pushed back on a couple of applications, and then we were under.
So sorry, just help me. Is this a use it or lose it thing, or is this can continue to build? There's no restriction on it building?
It continues to build, and requests can sometimes be lumpy because of
Right.
if you've got a land purchase or something
Yeah.
like that, or
Right.
affordable housing tends to come
Sure.
in big.
Yeah, I mean, not that I'm looking to
No.
bank the cash, but it's just, there's not an urgency like, oh my gosh, if we don't spend it,
No.
we can't. Okay.
Yep.
Exactly.
right.
So I mentioned there were seven requests, just quickly running through them. The largest was from the Community Municipal Affordable Housing Trust, Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Trust, excuse me. That's a little different, but it follows in the precedent from last year where it's funding the trust rather than funding any specific project. But of course, they come to us with sort of their list of things that they're working on. The $43,000 for the for RISO, which is also for housing. That request is up slightly because of the retirement of the director of that office, so they're going to have some overlap with staff during her retirement period. The other larger request was from the schools, from the Concord Public Schools for improvements around the Thoreau School for improved recreation facilities and creating a playing field at the school. That request, I think it says $500,000. A second phase of design on the Drouot Park. This is design, not construction, for $90,000. A preservation survey of modern structures in Concord. So think of the deck houses around town that are not part of the prior historic survey because they were less than 50 years old at the time that was done. But they are all coming up to the period where they would start falling under a preservation demolition delay if they were identified as historic. And there is additional $32,000 for document preservation from the town archivist, additional documents that they've got related to things around the 250th, and a staff request and staff and other budget, legal counsel and the like for $50,000.
Could you use it for a facilities building?
Most likely not, unless it's a recreation facility.
Well.
And if you're thinking about like restrooms at the high school, that would probably require the input of outside counsel as to whether that was general enough recreation or if it was supplanting what would be an ordinary town budget, which is CPA doesn't allow us to do.
Okay.
I have a question about the recreational fields at Thoreau. In the past, when we've had requests for CPC funds for things that were either churches or private clubs that weren't really accessible to the public because the public is paying, how accessible will these be to the public?
Well, those are some good examples, and as a practice, generally in the grant agreements, we do require some access for the public in those things. I'm thinking about across the circle here, the Masonic building.
Exactly.
That they needed to make some of that open for town groups.
Right.
But specific to the school, we've dug into that, talking, and I think there's a lot of interest from Concord Youth Soccer and being able to use that. And that they would be making that available. The facilities would be outside of school hours. But
What about the general public?
I think that the superintendent said that generally they welcome people to be on the campus and use the facilities there outside of the school hours. I don't, this is the one project we've got more questions on and we're continuing to dig into a little bit. But when you say general public, if you mean children playing on the playground equipment on the weekends, or youth soccer
Or
using the
people
fields,
just walking through?
or walking through, it does connect a couple trails.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. You know, right, those are generally well-used trails. I use them myself.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be thrown out
Right.
after paying $500,000.
I've asked a couple times specifically on the trail running behind the fence.
Okay,
back
good.
there.
Thank you.
You're covered.
Okay. Any other questions?
No?
Thank you, Burton.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, very good. We're moving right along. How are we doing for time? Pretty good.
Pretty
Okay,
good.
next is the survey, the results of the survey we did on the Select Board Liaison. Andrea?
Good evening. This is Andrea Fountain, the Assistant to the Select Board. I'm happy to be here. As part of the ongoing effort to foster collaboration and improve communication between the Select Board and our boards and committees, I'd like to present the findings gathered by the committees and the recent Board Liaison Role Questionnaire survey. I would also like to take a moment to sincerely thank all the boards and committee chairs who took the time to complete the questionnaire. Your thoughtful responses are instrumental in shaping a productive and inclusive framework. The Boards and Committee Liaison Role Questionnaire was distributed last month to boards and committee chairs with the goal of clarifying the liaison role, as well as to assist in strengthening communication. The definition that we used for Select Board Liaison is a liaison as a representative from the Select Board who attends committee meetings to communicate information between the Select Board and the committee. Their role is primarily advisory and communicative. They observe, provide updates, and convey information back to the Select Board. They do not, by design, participate in the committee's formal decision-making process or vote on matters.
Andrea, how many responses did you get?
30.
30.
Yeah, which is 50%.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
not bad.
Not bad, 50% is pretty good.
We have a very active chairs group, so they were
Yeah.
happy to provide good feedback. In short, the liaison facilitates communication and transparency while the committee members directly influence decisions through their voting power. There are exceptions, however. There are Select Board members that serve as a voting member. As an example, the Municipal Affordable Housing Trusts. They established pursuant to MGL Chapter 44, Section 55C, including Concord's, one member of the Select Board serves as a voting member of the Trust Board of Trustees and not simply as a liaison.
Right.
Getting into some of the findings. The highest response that we had was the top of the line here on the board and survey scores. Offer suggestions and ideas to the committee chair if possible. This was almost a universal response. Committee chairs are anxious to get feedback and make sure that there is open communication and ideas coming across.
These are responses, what was the question?
The question is offering, I'm sorry.
Just trying to,
I don't think we ever saw the survey.
yeah, I'm trying to figure out, is this stuff they want to see or stuff they do see, or?
This is what they do want to see. So most people are open to receiving feedback and having
This
suggestions
is what they
and
would like to
ideas.
see.
Exactly.
But sorry, just to ask another
That's
Most
question.
important.
So, right, highest to lowest, but the score of 8. So does that mean 8 out of the 30 people?
It was 8% of that group. So it was, I wanna say
8%?
So-
9,
Wait,
9 responses out of that group.
I'm not sure.
what
I'm
was
not
the-
sure exactly. I mean, I get the relatively, this was the highest score. This was the one they said the most. This is the one they said the least. I just wasn't sure what 8 means.
Yeah,
So 8 means 8 out of 30 people said that was important to them?
It is the majority of the responses that we received, yes. That is just representative, giving a timeline of, that is not an exact number. That is just a view.
Right.
Okay?
The takeaway here, I
I'm
think,
not
is
sure.
what is
All right,
relatively.
we'll go to its highest to lowest.
Survey, this is not,
what was
It's
the
not an
question?
exact-
That they're, what?
That's fine.
What did the survey, still not really following this. What does the survey say?
survey
Like,
says that
says-
this is the most important thing.
Sorry?
What did,
Attend meetings to listen and answer questions when invited. And what people were saying was suggestions are always welcome when possible.
Okay.
Okay. The next most important response was stay informed about the committee's mission and goals. The
I
next-
think what we're running into here is something, we do a lot of surveys in Concord, and we're really amateurs at this. So I think what we can take away from this is, relatively speaking, what did the committee, the boards and committees chairs think were most important? So it's relatively, I think it's giving us good information. As far as what was the sample size and how many people answered this question,
I can
Right.
get that for you,
It's-
Mary.
we can get it, but it's not
Provide you with the
clear.
yeah,
exact
I don't
numbers.
think it's important for the
Yeah,
takeaway.
we'll just take
but
away
it's,
that these are the
it's
most
what they
important ones.
want to see, not what they're getting now.
I don't
Or
think
is
Really
it,
get into that, whether they're receiving it or not. This was more what they are looking for from their
the
liaison.
question was, what are you looking for in your liaison? Is that right? Does anyone have the survey? It's not, I don't know.
I can provide that to
Okay,
you,
I'm
of
just
course,
not
Terry.
following exactly how this works. Okay.
The next most high response was share relevant information during discussions. So some of the chairs were hoping that their liaison would be able to provide some perspective. And then some of the chairs are looking for support for their initiatives and goals. So looking for someone that's a team player to help them with the initiatives and not necessarily their own ideas, just to work and help with the chair's initiatives. One of the other key points that came up was mentoring and encouraging new members. And I think, Mary, you and I have spoken about that one a little bit, about training and being able to onboard more
Right.
efficiently.
Right.
I think that was part of what was coming to light.
So, and is that for the committee? What's the select board as a liaison, our role for onboarding a new committee member? I'm a little confused.
The liaison can help mentor them and encourage new members. We can play a role in that.
To participate, okay.
I think,
And the other one that came in as a minor issue was reserve comments for the public comment section. And then some of the key
Is that clear?
highlights.
kind of,
Yeah, I think, I mean, I think these are all good. I mean, I think, so don't, the survey, we were just trying to understand the context of,
Right.
you know, how many or what, you know,
Right.
how often is this
This is not a
big thing?
scientifically
Correct.
accurate.
So it's fine. So we just take it as biggest to smallest.
The survey, if
the-
that's helpful.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, just what is the question?
The question is, how can the select board liaison best support your committee? Select all that apply.
Thank you.
And then that list is
Yeah.
there.
Right, so what I'm thinking is there was 30 people who responded, there's 53 responses here.
Right.
Some people just picked one, some people picked two or three.
Got it?
No,
Yeah.
that's true.
Yeah,
Okay.
so, okay,
Thank
so,
Yeah, thank you,
you know.
Carmen, yeah.
yes, okay.
Thank you
So,
for translating that.
and so it wasn't, this is from a list of options.
Yes.
That they were given.
Yes.
Because the one thing that I was kind of a little surprised, and I'd be interested in the rest of the select board's, or anyone else's feedback here too, is something about actually helping recruit members or determine sort of the committee makeup or
Yep.
you know, representation. Because I think that's also another thing.
It is, we talked about reviewing
yeah.
their charter, and that's all.
Yeah, and just sort of like, okay, who's on the committee, who's coming up for renewal? Okay, do we have somebody to backfill, or, you know, what does that kind of look like?
So
Some of-
what's your question?
No, just,
Oh,
is
okay.
it, I mean,
Surprised it wasn't.
your
there.
experience, how much have you been involved in sort of doing that, and how important do you kind of view it? Because I think it's an important piece too.
Okay,
One of the
go
key
ahead.
highlights that came up was the importance of engagement. The survey responses reflect a strong commitment to attending meetings, active participation, and supporting chair initiatives across the boards and committees, reviewing meeting minutes, and maintain communication with the committee chair as needed. Collaboration was also another key point in communication. Many respondents emphasized the importance of maintaining open lines of communication with chairs and providing timely feedback on ideas and initiatives, staying informed about the committee's mission and goals. The only other one that kept repeating itself was the streamlined committees to enhance effectiveness, and I think that was to try to cut down on the amount of committees so that liaisons could focus more on the most critical
Wow.
programs and initiatives. So some of the other suggestions included increasing mentorship opportunities for new members, encouraging a broader input from attendees as well as chairs and liaisons. Training opportunities also came up. I know you mentioned the First Amendment training.
Yep. Yep.
You've also had tours of different facilities, which they found very helpful, finding out information on what took place. And then again, just structural changes in the committees, and that was the last item. Potential recommendations was to be sure that there is clarity around the roles, that the liaison is clear on what their role is to support the chairs and to be able to open up communications between select board and the committees. And that was the end.
Thank you, Andrea. I think for me, the takeaway from this is the key is having a good relationship with the chair of the committee that you're the liaison with. Things like attending meetings might not be critical, but getting to know the chair and what they need from you, at least that's, if I distill it down into my one takeaway, that would be my takeaway. Does anybody else have any questions, comments?
All the committees work a little differently.
They do.
Some engage you more actively than others. I generally follow, I save my comments till the end of the meeting unless someone's inquiring. And then I think sharing what I found most valuable from feedback is what's going on in other committees and linking committees to committees.
Yes.
And keeping them abreast of what's going on in other committees that we're aware of. So I think people find that very beneficial.
As Andrea pointed out, there are some committees that select board members are voting members, and I think the middle school building committee, the MCI advisory board, the municipal affordable housing trust, but in other committees, we're not voting members. And again, another takeaway I got from this is the chairs want us to communicate with them and not act as an active participation in their meetings. That's true. That's what I took away. And you're right, everyone's different. But if I had to make a generalization going in to a committee, I would assume that my connection is to the chair and I'm not a member of the committee. That's what I took away from what I heard or in the responses I saw. Does anybody else have any observations or clarifying questions?
Well, I think also sometimes we can be like a, I guess, a technical advisor, like if they have questions about, we have a vacancy, what do we do? Or how, can we do something with our charter? Or does this meet the open meeting law or whatever? We're like the technical
That's
advisor.
true. But they're asking us.
Yes.
Right? So that was my takeaway. Anybody else?
No, I just echo that, and I think it's good information.
good.
I think, the communication is always, no matter how much you do, is you should do more, right? So I know for me, even looking at this list, it's like, all right, how do I reach back out to folks? And at a minimum, make sure they know if there's ever anything you need, you just don't hesitate, right?
Right.
So.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Andrea. Okay, thank you very much. Next item is flag policy. And we're only 15 minutes behind.
Really? Not too bad.
We're good.
All right.
We're good. You're good.
All right, well,
I'm not rushing you.
Oh. All right.
Yeah, you want to kick us off here, Wendy?
Yeah, let's start this off.
And then
Okay.
we'll get into it.
So,
We have like 4 slides, I think, 4 or 5 slides.
yeah, we do. And we might get, use the first 3 or so and the last to reference. So we can probably go right to the next slide, Andrea, thanks. Okay, so just as a reminder, this board, the last time we spoke about this policy was back in September, so it's been a couple months. You had a very lengthy conversation about this. I actually wasn't here, but I did listen to the recording. We made a lot of progress in putting forth a policy or revising the policy. And there were probably 2 main things that were important in that policy. One was that we memorialized sort of our historic practices of flag flying around town. It wasn't just the center flagpole. We fly a lot of the military flags 24/7 in some locations. We fly UN flags on certain occasions. So we memorialized some of those practices. And that was a request of the select board meeting, earlier, in earlier meetings. But probably more importantly, we crafted an approach to approving ceremonial flags for the town. And that process involves the select board being the sponsor for flying a particular ceremonial flag, and we're doing that in conjunction with a town proclamation or celebration. And I think that was key from a litigation perspective, as other towns had been criticized for not following a certain procedure. That's an
Exactly.
important procedure for us. What was outstanding in the last meeting was a discussion around, should we also allow flying of ceremonial flags on town light poles? And we'll have a further
We'll get to
discussion
that.
on that in a moment.
Okay.
Following that meeting, though, we also had some follow-up discussions with the town staff, and there were a couple issues that were brought to our attention. One was that we had omitted a practice where we fly the Gold Star flag on Gold Star Mother's Day up in the town ceremony. So we've included that modification in the policy. again, memorializing our current practices. And the newer issue that came up was pertaining to the UN flags. There's actually 193 member states that are part of the United Nations. We have just about 105 of those flags in-house, so we're not flying all of the United Nations flags. And so that raised some concern over, well, how do we choose what flags we're flying? We don't really have a policy behind it. And then as part of that, we've also been, we've withheld flying of certain flags over time. And those reasons are not documented, and you might perceive them to be reasonable, but we'll get into some of those issues. So let's move on and talk about these particular issues that we want to talk about.
Yeah, so if we go to the next.
Yeah, the ceremonial
We go to the
flag.
next slide, yeah.
All right, so in this particular slide, we're just, the actual language that was up for discussion or that we're being reviewed is actually in quotes here. So this is a part of the language around ceremonial flags, and it's just a specific statement in the policy that says, in addition to the town center flagpole, the town, with the approval of the select board, may fly ceremonial flags on flag holders attached to town light poles. So that's the specific language that we're talking about today. Now, there were some concerns during the discussion around this particular flying of these flags, and some were, how do you differentiate when you should fly additional flags and when not? Are we being consistent and fair across the celebrations when we offer this opportunity to do this? And in some cases, we might be less inclined to authorize the flying of a ceremonial flag if we were thinking that we would fly more of those flags on the light poles. We should also point out that the flying of the flags on the light poles, there is an administrative expense by doing that. We should just be aware of that. And also in the research that Cameron and I had done, we really didn't, there weren't any other policies that sort of had additional flags flying. They tended to just focus on a single flagpole flying, a ceremonial flag. And we just also thought it was important to note that the one place where this comes up, probably most top of mind, is our recent Pride Day event, where we had put the Pride Day flags on the telephone poles. And I'll just note it was definitely very well received by the people on that day participating. And so today, what we need to do is decide, are we going to include this particular language in the policy or not? And so I actually think that would be helpful to sort of get people's perspective on this one part of the policy now. So, Chairman, do you want to add to
Yeah,
this?
we can do that, or we can go, because the second issue is around the United Nations flags, and then.
But maybe we should just stick to this topic.
Yeah, let's
And
stick to this topic.
do this one
Let's
and
do
sort
one
of
at a
see if we
time.
can make this decision.
I think that would be easier for me. I don't know, but do you have a?
That's fine.
You don't care. You're good.
Either way.
You're good.
Either way. Okay. Yeah, look, if we want to go, flip forward a couple of slides. I guess, to me, there's a kind of an outline of choices here, right?
Yeah,
That are
I'm hoping we
related
don't
to.
mix them, but.
Yeah, so I just think there's kind of a helpful summary of sort of choices
Yeah,
in
I
terms
like the
of,
summary.
in terms of kind of what we're looking at. And we can take the issues separately if we like. I think it applies in both cases, but.
I'm confused. What?
So,
I really am. I'm confused.
Sure. Go ahead.
So the choice right now is, do we want to take them one at a time, or do we want to take them together?
Yes,
so
What's,
but I'm happy to do either one. If you want to take the first one first,
let's just do
I
that.
still want to frame the.
you want to go to this summary?
I still want to frame the choice.
Before we go back.
If we're going to talk about
Got it.
this,
Go ahead.
if you want to talk about this one issue, I still want to frame the choice,
Okay, go
right?
ahead.
Because the choice is, right, so what we've done is, if you look at sort of the spectrum of
Yep.
choices, right? There are towns that have chosen to only fly the US flag or the state and military flags, right? And you see those listed, Carlisle, Wellesley, Lincoln, et cetera, right? So then there's people that have kind of said, oh, we're mostly just going to do that, but we're going to make a couple of very specific carve-out exceptions. And that is, for instance, Acton, that's saying, hey, we're going to allow, for one pole, one day, the display of a sovereign nation, or for Medford, we're going to only allow flags for Pride Day and Juneteenth. And then you have what we're debating here, okay, which is Concord saying, will we allow the ceremonial flags to fly without additional language around sort of the additional flagpoles, which is what some towns like Bedford and Holliston have done? Or are we going to go to, if you look at the far right, which is actually proposing additional language on ceremonial flags, not only on the town center flagpole, but at the select board's discretion, flying in on additional town flagpoles? Just understand we're proposing language that we can't find any precedent for, and that raises an additional set of issues around how are you deciding for which ceremonies you're doing this, for which ones you're not, and the cost related to it.
Consistent with the original, what we did on the center flagpole? In other words, we're saying, if you've got a celebration or a proclamation, that means the flag will fly on the center.
Correct.
Now we can also fly them, you can only fly them on the town, other flagpoles if it's first on the.
Correct.
Right? So.
Correct.
So we're
Yes.
consistent there. I mean,
When you say we're consistent,
well, I mean, we have a process.
we have a process for
that now
saying,
applies to not just this pole, but all the poles.
so there would be here's the process,
Yep.
again, in this third column. The process says we're going to allow a ceremonial flag to fly
Yep.
on the town center flagpole.
Yep.
There is also the debate, and no one's actually debating that. So we're actually agreeing to the thing that,
Yes.
some other towns
We
haven't
agree.
agreed to, but we've agreed to. Okay.
We agree.
So then there's the question of, do I have additional language that says
Yes.
we are going to separately have a discussion and vote on whether we allow that ceremonial flag to fly on additional flagpoles across town?
So-
That is sort of the
So I don't
question.
So some would and some wouldn't.
It would be up to us. It would be up to the select board. It would be
So I don't understand this language up here, ceremonial flag language. That, the,
So keep in mind, that we have a policy, right? And
Yep.
so the term ceremonial flag represents those flags that are not otherwise identified in the first section of the policy listed as state, federal, town
yeah, but this
flags.
proposed language on the slide that says ceremonial flag language.
Yes.
Yep. So,
Which one is that in this summary of choices?
so.
If you adopted that language, it would be all the way
So
to the far right.
if you can imagine, in this
Okay.
column, we have 3 columns, right, that Cameron just went through this risk.
Yep.
There's
We
4
agreed
columns.
in your last meeting, we were in column 3.
Yeah,
We were agreeing that we were gonna have ceremonial flag, and what's
Right.
open right now is a question of, will you go one step further when we are approving a ceremonial flag
oh,
to allow additional flag, the same ceremonial flag, but to fly on the town light pole?
Okay.
holders? That's what's at issue right now.
okay.
So it's a question of additional of the same ceremonial flag flying. So that's really what we're trying to do.
And no other towns have that policy that we can.
Now that
No,
we-
town policies actually speak to flags outside, flags flying on their light poles at all. We know the towns do, but it's not in their policies.
And what are the pros and cons of this last column?
Do you want to speak to this?
Well, so if you go to that, yeah, I mean, if you go up 2 slides.
Okay, I see.
Yeah,
Yep.
you see sort of the concerns. So we can address that issue, and then we can secondly address the UN flags if you,
Well, I think
I
we
have a
got the
question.
idea. of
The
this.
reason we got into this way back when in September was because we wanted to keep out of trouble. We wanted to, right, we wanted to protect the town so that we're not making decisions that people could say, you discriminated against us by not letting us fly our flag when you let them fly their flag, right? So to me, this seems like a continuation of that.
So.
when you say it seems like a continuation.
But what I mean is if we've set a policy that says, we've got a policy, the select board's going to decide based on a proclamation or a celebration, whether we allow a flag on the center pole, then putting it on subsequent poles just seems like I use the word consistent with that. Why wouldn't we? Because couldn't we get in the same thing where somebody says, well, why did you let those people fly their flags, but you didn't let me fly my flags on the light poles?
Well, that's what yeah, I mean, when you say it's consistent, I mean, it's another additional decision.
Yeah.
That's in another additional, so in what,
Why are
so,
we making it, I guess, why are we separating it? Why isn't it just? Never mind. I get
You're
it.
saying we don't need a
Why is
fourth
it so
column.
hard?
You're saying, yeah, why do we need this fourth column? It's the third column.
It's trying
is-
to represent what this additional
so,
line in the policy represents. So I think this is gonna happen, it's gonna get confusing. So, but let's just step back to
Okay,
why
let's
we're
step
here, okay? We've already addressed and reviewed a policy that
Yes,
says we will
thank
allow
you.
ceremonial flags.
Yes,
And it requires this select board
yes.
to sponsor that.
Right,
And
Correct.
it would be approved through a proclamation or town
right.
celebration.
That's right.
So,
Very clear.
so we've
Now,
already approved that a flag can fly, and at the same time, potentially have a flag raising ceremony on the pole,
Right.
same thing.
right,
Then we had one item in the policy that said, in addition, the select board can allow the same flag to fly on the town light poles. It's really, presumably, when we're gonna have a flag raising, there's gonna be a process of what's part of the celebration. And this is just something that we're being allowed to consider. We must approve things that are in the town right of way, and these flag poles are in the town right of way, so it's important that we weigh in on that decision. Not every town celebration flies things on the light poles, some may.
but
and
wouldn't
some
we
may
get in
not.
trouble, back to the reason we did
As long
this?
as it's the select board.
so when you say when we get in trouble,
By that I mean somebody would say, hey, you let this group fly their flag on the center pole and the light poles, and you let the next group fly it on the center pole but not on the light
Correct.
poles, right?
yes.
So, doesn't that mean we're being,
So, well, I'll give you my opinion. So my opinion is we shouldn't go down that path, and we should fly them in the column 3, which is what other towns have done, who have chosen to fly
well,
ceremonial
that's
flags.
one way to do it, that's kind of a
It's-
drastic way to do it, but.
It's, well, it's
Go
the
ahead,
only,
sorry,
it's as
sorry,
far as,
wrong
well,
word.
it's as far as any other town has gone. So it's, to say it's drastic,
Well,
is implying that we're sort of cutting something off, when in
we
fact
are,
it's,
we're cutting off what we've already done.
Right,
We're cutting off what we've already done.
which
So
we
that's
did
why-
once,
Yeah, but.
according to no policy.
Yeah, but we did it, and it was.
We did
well
one thing one
received.
time, and it was,
Okay,
and people liked it.
Go ahead.
Yes,
The people liked it.
and people liked it.
And
So,
it
so
says-
do you want, so again, but there, if you're gonna set a policy,
Yeah,
so your policy is, you're gonna do that for everybody all the time.
No, it doesn't say that. It says, in addition to the sound plan pole, the select board.
So you're either gonna do it for everybody all the time, or you're gonna say, hey, I'm gonna do it for some people, but I'm not gonna do it for
That's
other
what
people.
bothers me. If we said
Okay,
we
so I
would
do it for
all-
some, but not
if
for
we had
others.
said, the ceremony language that we adopted earlier now applies to, and addition, they can also do on light poles if they've got a proclamation or a celebration.
And
I would
someone's
feel
paying.
better about that, actually.
Wait, say it again, that they could, or that they always would?
That they always would, that those are the same thing, that
That-
like flagpole here, flagpoles all over are the same criteria, which is, it's either a proclamation or a celebration.
Yeah.
That, I feel,
But are you saying that every celebration where there's a flag raising would have would have the extra flags?
they could.
They could, that's different than they will, that we're
Well,
gonna
we give-
require it.
It's not,
Versus-
they could if they want to, but we're not telling them they have
That's
to.
what I'm, okay, so that's what
Yeah,
I'm
but-
thinking, that's what this language says.
Yeah,
They
but wait a
could-
second, it says at an additional cost to the town.
Where does it
So,
say?
well, in.
Well, the
in-
town's
Well, that's part
gotta,
of
the
your
town's gotta put all the
right.
flags up, the
I
town's
mean,
gotta take all the flags
How
down,
much does
yes.
that cost to put up all these other flags
we'll
on
know
the
any
flag?
Yeah,
flags.
but I don't think we
Yeah.
want to make this policy based on cost.
This
Well,
is just a
I,
consideration.
Well, but it is a
think that's
thing.
one of
I mean,
the
it's not based on
considerations.
cost, but.
Not a big cost.
Like if an organization wants to put it in the center, on the center flagpole, but
Yep.
they also want to fund our, because now you're talking about overtime staff, and these guys have to go out and put on, I don't know how many different light poles. If they want to fund it, they maybe should be allowed to fund it, but if they don't want to fund it, then it would just go on the center.
I don't
But
think
we went down that path, and
Yeah,
that
we
doesn't,
haven't-
that doesn't work, because it's,
Okay.
you're not
That's
able to
one-
do that
That's one
because of,
consideration in my mind, anyway.
you're not able
Say
to
if
do
you can
that.
pay for it, we'll let you do
You
it.
can't, we tried.
Yeah, we can't.
There were some people who tried to do that, that
That's
just,
not exactly what.
no,
I'm
I
saying.
know, but that doesn't really,
All right.
sort of doesn't really work.
Okay.
So So I just,
So did you think about what I said about how if,
so I've thought about it a lot. I have. So I have.
it doesn't surprise me.
And I'm tying it in, and the reason why I sort of tie it in with the UN flags as well, because
Okay, go
I think,
ahead. Go to
because
the
there
UN.
is.
Yeah, let's go to the UN.
No, because the UN flags, again, so there's 193 countries of the United Nations, and we fly flags of 89 of the 193. And we don't have a justification as to why we fly those countries' flags.
But that's a,
different.
And not-
that's a good
and-
point, but to me, it's a different
It's a
issue.
different point, but it becomes related, because, okay, so let's talk about that, and then we'll come
Okay,
back.
we'll
So,
come back to
so
this.
we don't have a rationale as to how we've decided to fly those flags,
Okay, so, yeah.
okay?
Would anyone run for select board?
So,
Yeah, Andrew, can you go to the UN flags? So, as we already said, there's 193 states that represent the United Nations. We have about 100, 105 of those flags. We started initially by flying the founding member UN state flags. There were like 51 numbers in here. And then it just grew over time. They were just purchased somewhat randomly. There were some flags that were selectively asked not to be flown, things like Cuba or some others. There
Who
were
asked?
11.
Who asked?
It was somebody in the town office.
Not known.
Okay, over time. And this goes back, the last time it happened was 2014, so no one's here. But the point was, to Cameron's point, what we've done hasn't been documented.
Got
We
it.
follow a
Okay.
rule.
Right.
So obviously, from a concern perspective, we would like to put something in place that is administratively easy to follow, that puts some
Okay.
guides into that. That's
Okay,
our
and you're
goal here
proposing-
around United
And you're
Nations.
proposing
So
founding,
we said there were two choices. You could choose to not fly any United Nations flags at all. And these are flags, by the way, that are on temporary wooden flagpoles in the sidewalks. Another option might be to fly just the founding UN nation states. Although I would recommend, because there were some states that were, because they weren't flown, that we would not fly the nation states where the United States has a full comprehensive sanction against that country. And those are listed as Cuba, North Korea, Syria, Iran, and Russia. Only because, I know this is
So-
where it
so-
gets, but
yeah.
it's a simple approach, but it would also
Yeah.
mean
Wow.
you're only flying
But-
like 50. So, but the point here is,
yeah, but we have to keep
If-
track of,
I
there's
know.
not that many, these don't ever change.
and
And there's a
Cuba
website, and it's right there.
Change someday.
and I'm sorry, and in my mind, again, in my mind, it's arbitrary, because,
Yeah.
and I applaud Wendy for trying to come up with a rationale, but it's arbitrary, right? So we're gonna,
I gotta stop, wait, I gotta stop. Thank you for doing this work. No, really. Thank you for thinking about
but it's,
this.
but,
This is a
right.
lot bigger
But,
than we thought it was gonna be.
right, because
Thank
it
you
does
for
come
that.
down, I mean, these things get, so,
But we might be overthinking it.
well,
So, let's just think.
but before you go to overthink, I just want to make sure we're clear. So when we talk about founding nation states, what we're saying is, hey, somehow we decided we're going to fly the flag of like China and Venezuela,
Yeah.
but we're not going to fly the flag of like Sweden
Yeah.
or Finland.
And who
And
did
it's and who decided that? Well, we just sort of decided. Like, what did you base it on? Well, we said founding states. So I mean, I have no precedent that that's defensible to say, hey, we're going to fly, these flags, but not those flags.
Okay, I would be, just to get to, I would be okay with not flying any UN flags, but I would really want to, maybe we can, I really think that we should allow ceremonial flags if it's tied to a proclamation or a celebration to be flown on all flagpoles. If that's what the people who are proposing or come to us with the proclamation are asking for. That's my position based on listening and reading and thinking.
Okay. So I'm just going to play out a couple of examples to make sure that we're clear on what you're proposing. Okay. So last year there was a proclamation for India Day.
Yep.
So on India Day, we would say, hey, we want to fly a flag on the town center flagpole.
That's right.
On India Day, we also would like to put up, we would like the town to pay to put up flags of another country all over town,
Well,
and we're going to put up the India
who's
flags.
we? Who's we?
Well, it would be proposed, and
If it's proposed.
if it's proposed,
Go ahead.
if it's proposed, and if we say, hey, if we allow it on the town center flagpole, we allow it on any and all flagpoles, right? So, okay, town, I'd like you to incur the cost to put up the flags of another country all over town. And if you're going to do it for India Day, somebody's going to say you're going to do it for Israel. And if you're going to do it for Israel, somebody's going to say the Palestinian flag. And then you're putting, so, and I'm using these as examples. I'm just saying, you're going to very quickly say, okay, so now we're paying the town to drive around and put up flags all over town for
Okay.
all these different things, because you can't differentiate. You can't say, I'm going to do it for one, but not for all. So if that's what everybody wants to sign up for,
I'm hoping.
there's no precedent that other towns have done that.
I'm hoping that in conversations with the proposer, you would be able to have that conversation with them and say, the sponsor, thank you.
We are the sponsor, by the way.
But the person who comes to us with and you'd be able to say, do you realize the implications of what you're asking for it each year? You really want to do that, and people might be reasonable, and people are interested in cost. So maybe, but to me, the cost of that and overweighs the fact that we're allowing people to do that. We can't discriminate, and I think it's what people want.
Okay?
I mean-
So
Well,
I think,
keep in mind that ceremonial flags are only going to be flown for a day, so it's really a short window also,
But-
right? And it really does add to the celebration. If there's going to be a
so,
celebration.
yeah, I mean,
It's one day.
well, it's the best efforts. I mean, for instance, people put them up over like a 3 or 4 day long weekend or something. So again, I mean,
I don't know, that's
No,
what
no,
I'm thinking.
I
What do
think,
you
I think that happened before, and then we said, no, it's going to be one day for.
we're gonna try.
Well, it's
It's
up
what
to
it-
the
no,
DPW.
Yeah, it's up to the DPW,
okay,
right.
okay, okay.
So
Yeah.
that's what I'm thinking,
Right.
but
Yeah.
there are other,
So-
what do you think?
yeah.
What do you think?
I mean, so my personal opinion is, when you go to the summary, I mean, we're, by having celebration flags go up on the town center flagpole, we're doing as much as any other town has done. I don't like the idea of trying to set new precedent and getting into all of this debate about, all these different flags, maybe or maybe not going up all over town. To me, a celebration where we do acknowledge all of the people who are involved in a particular event. We've got a proclamation. We're doing a flag raising ceremony. We may have a parade. You can carry flags down the street. You can put them on your private property. You can put them in the windows of your business. I don't see how that's not being supportive, right? So that's my personal opinion, is I think that's actually being very supportive. I just think we should strive for a policy to be simple, equitable, cost-effective, easy to manage, with precedents that's defensible. And I don't think venturing into, sort of uncharted territory and including that language, I just don't think that accomplishes those goals. So that's my 2 cents.
Very perspective.
Well, I am kind of swayed by what Cameron's saying. It's simple, it's consistent, it's not putting us on the forefront to get sued or get accused of favoritism.
We're not gonna be sued.
Or, accused of favoritism. The select board doesn't have to make have this kind of discussion every time, So, one thing I'm persuaded by is that there is no town on the list at all doing. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 other towns in the third column. So that.
Well,
maybe we
I
should
don't
do
know
that.
if this is.
I mean, there's examples. I mean, we pull the examples we could come up with, yes.
And the reason I brought up cost was not because, we're going to recover a nickel here and a dime there, but it's more to get them to be engaged with, everybody wants everything. But now if,
That's a good point.
if
You're right.
you have to make a copay or whatever, now you're going to.
Yeah,
but
we
if-
can't go there. but-
Okay, well, if we don't want to go there, then I think then the one ceremonial flag in the center makes the most sense.
And not allowing them on flag poles at all.
On the additional,
Yeah,
Right.
correct.
That's what,
that's That's what
That's
you're
Right,
talking about.
because you're talking about town staff that has to go around and put them all up.
Right.
And take them all down again.
Right.
And we're just hearing about how we have all this scope creep, and we're adding all these new services, but we don't have enough money for it, so, okay, I'm going with Cameron on this.
So, I mean, I'm concerned about taking something away. We've
Yeah.
had this practice already, you know, I think it's particularly problematic, particularly for our LGBT community, who, it was very welcoming, it was very engaging, very important to that
Yeah.
community, and they're an important part of a larger.
Yeah, I agree with all
larger
that.
Part of our community these days. So I personally would support keeping this language. That's my
So we're split.
figures. Mark's not here.
Can we vote on the United Nations flag?
We can. We can. Yeah.
Can we really?
Yeah.
Okay, so I told my position, I would like to scrap the United Nations flags altogether. What do other people think?
I agree with that.
Yeah, I agree,
I don't
because,
wanna, but,
I mean, you're taking something away again, but,
well, I hope if we don't do this, that we find some other way to I mean, this has been something this town has been doing for years in recognition of United Nations, because we fly it on
So we're still gonna
Nations
fly
Day
it on
and
the
peace.
center?
No, there are no, I mean, there is.
There's no
a
one
United-
flag. Yeah, we could fly a
there is
United Nations
the
flag.
United
That's what I
Nations
meant.
Yeah,
flag.
yes.
Okay.
You could have a United Nations Peace Day and put up the United Nations flag, yes, but not the individual countries.
Right, that's what I was thinking.
Yes.
So are we, can we take a vote on that?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I'll make a motion
Go
that
ahead.
our flag policy does not include the proposed, or does not include the language around the flying of United Nations flags on United Nations Day and Peace Day.
Do I have a second?
except for the one United Nations.
Well, that can be addressed under the,
Can be a
as
ceremonial.
that can be a
it would
ceremonial flag, so that would have to,
flag.
yeah,
Okay.
so that will be covered.
All right, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm opposed.
Okay. Okay, so that passes 3-1. The other one, I think we're still split 2-2. Oh, God, we have to come back to this.
If we're split 2-2, I mean, what else can we do? I mean,
We have to come back.
Well, I'm just going to say again, I do agree with Wendy that, you don't want to take anything away. That's why, you could give them the choice that if they want to go out and raise all this money and do all this, it's that important, then,
So
You don't
Terry,
agree with that?
I understand exactly what you're saying. It's not a bad idea, but if you go down that path,
yeah.
you run right into, you are discriminating against me because I don't have the money
Right.
to do it.
No, we're not discriminating. We're the same policy for everybody. We will put up the one
So you're
flag.
making
We'll put up the one flag.
expression
in the-
choices based on who I mean, you're essentially saying, I'm basing the choices I'm going to make and the flags I'm going to fly based on people's ability to
No,
pay.
not really, because I'm saying
But-
we will put the flag up in the center flagpole.
Can we do that? That's it. Well, can we do that?
We
Can say
we
to
already
everybody-
agreed to that.
We did.
No, but can we say, if you want us to put them on the town flagpoles?
On the
Light poles,
right.
thank you. Then you've
There's a-
got to give us a certain amount of money, and everybody has to give us the same amount of money.
We're not making a profit, we're just trying to get
You'd
back,
be
you know.
seeking
can
a
we do that?
donation.
Yeah,
something like that.
donation or
Donation from
whatever.
policy, you
You
can't.
know?
We can ask. I'm skeptical.
that.
I'm skeptical.
We can't
I'm
do
very
that.
skeptical.
Why not?
Well, because then it becomes,
All right. I don't know. I don't know what to say then. It's just, we don't want to take it away.
So it's the cost that you're,
Well, it's just a way to make a policy out of this without taking it away,
well, but if I understand you correctly, the reason that you're
Well,
That's one of your
that's
main
one of the
considerations.
things,
And
but the
what's-
other thing is just, we have to be consistent, and why should we be out in the forefront on this?
Because it's the right thing to do.
Oh, well, okay, well, I'm not totally convinced about that,
Well,
that's.
Is it though? I mean, I just,
I think to some people it is.
Right.
But as a policy, but again, it's the right thing to do because you or somebody thinks for that cause it's the right thing to do. But as a policy, is it the right thing to do for everybody all the time? Because as a policy, if you write the policy that way, that's what it means.
I think a policy is enforcing, though, it's enabling. It's not forcing, it's like saying, hey, if you're LGBTQ, you have to have a flag and you have to fly it on all the, no, we're saying you have
But-
this option.
right.
So you're not dictating to people what they
You're
can
not
do.
dictating to
You're
people, but what you're saying you're going to allow
Right, right,
is,
exactly.
so I'm going to allow, so I think it's good practice, to use my examples, for the town to use its money to drive all over town,
What's the money
to put up flags, to put up flags
Yeah.
of other nations and put them up all over and get into that debate of, well, so then we're going to do that for one, but we're not going to do it for everyone. And then we're going to have, I just think you're going down a rabbit hole that has a lot more implications from just one particular cause.
Well, okay, we've already done the UN flag, so that's done, right? And we're still disagreeing. I don't think we're going to get, I think
don't
we're
think
kind of
we're gonna
spinning.
have this.
Yeah,
is the same
so I'm fine to table it. Let's table it and bring it back when Mark is,
Good.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yep.
Do you want to take comment comments from the public?
No. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I think we've already talked about this enough.
we'll table it.
So
and-
when we bring this back, can we have like a 5-minute time limit, like just hear from Mark and take a vote? Because this is the same conversation we have every time, and I don't know.
I'll
It's always
ask
late at
Mark
night.
to watch the
Late.
video, right?
Yeah,
And he will, and he'll come and will, give a very, very brief,
Okay,
each of us can say why we voted the way we
Okay,
voted, and then
Sure.
all the pressure.
You can give us a time limit.
Yep.
great.
Great, okay, good, thank you. Oh, gosh, where are we now?
The last item, I think,
Goal
was
alignment.
goal alignment.
Oh, Kimberly, thank you for being so patient.
So I'm going to kick this off.
It's the last
Again,
item. I'm excited.
There's a lot of information in the packet. We're not going to go through all of that. That's there for you to review as you have time. So this item is titled Discussion of Fiscal 25 Goal Alignment. We're hoping to talk about two things. The merit pay plan, which we talked about a little bit under the budget discussion, and the work that we've been doing there and how we're tying that to select board and town manager goals. And there's an example in the presentation of one of the departments and how that is rolling out. So Kimberly Crum, our HR consultant, is on site this week because she's conducting supervisory training. But she is going to talk through the presentation, kind of how this evolved and what we've been doing and how it's going to roll out between now and the beginning of the calendar year. So, Kimberly.
Thank you, Carrie, and thank you for the opportunity to be with you tonight. I am Kimberly Crum. I've been working with the town since last May, where I came on right after your town meeting to help with the well, first of all, as the interim Human Resources Director, and served in that role through the end of that last year, and then had the opportunity to work as special projects in human resources, and I'm delighted to be continuing that work. I thought we'd start by taking a look at the pay philosophy that was set in the classification and compensation study. It's really 4 parts and probably familiar to all of us, but as a reminder, our goal with any pay philosophy is for the organization to be able to retain their qualified and experienced employees and recruit, to the extent we have resignations or retirements, to be able to recruit the very best and brightest that are available to serve the town. To maximize our investment in employees, that's in the skill development. You know, we do quite a bit of training and getting people onboarded and up to speed. And we don't want to lose that. We want to make sure we're compensating people fairly, and we don't want to lose that skill development. Their retained institutional knowledge, which here in Concord is significant, and their community knowledge. you know, the ability to get things done within the town with the number of boards and committees you have and all the players that are so active. This is an opportunity for us to retain that community knowledge as well. And all of this is part of the goal to make sure that we're serving Concord citizens. So if you'll recall with the compensation and classification study that was approved at town meeting, it went through a number of phases, but one was to ensure internal equity across positions, across departments. So many employees did the job analysis questionnaire, and that helped kind of rack and stack where jobs should be posted within the pay ranges, the pay grades. And then next, there were 29 towns that were surveyed, and that helped decide or determine what the minimums and maximums for each pay grade would be. And then finally, you made a conscious decision that you would pay the minimum of each pay range would be set at the 85th percentile, which was a significant difference because your 85th percentile used to be at the midpoint. So you made a conscious choice to pay at a higher rate in order to obtain the quality of employees that you want to serve residents. So the plant or the compensation and classification study had some additional recommendations. One was to ensure that employees kind of know what to expect over time. So once you go into this new classification or this new pay plan, if you will, which we did in July of 2023, how can we devise a structure so that employees know what to expect over time? And so this last July, we implemented a step pay plan so that employees know over time. It's a step each year. It'll be at least 2% is what we built into the plan, plus any market fluctuations that might exist. And then the study additionally said you have the option to set up a merit pool each year. And it was specific in saying that there would be a difference between compensation available to employees. There would be one rate for meets expectations performance and a higher rate for folks who perform at a higher level. And then finally, that we ensure that there's proper communication and training around how we would accomplish this, including new information or new structure for performance evaluation and performance management. I think you may be one ahead of me.
Oh, sorry.
Forgive me. So what's next? It's the creation of the merit pay program. And so this is a criteria-based evaluation system. It has the larger payments for those who have exceptional performance, and it is a one-time cash incentive that's not included in base pay. And so we started just this summer, right after the step pay plan was implemented, meeting one-on-one with each of the SMT members to get input from them on what it would take in their specific departments for employees and this incentive plan to be successful. And we gathered a lot of information. Within the feedback were consistent themes about post-COVID supervision. There were a number of new supervisors that had been added to the town from outside the town. And additionally, we had a number of supervisors that have been promoted within the town that maybe weren't familiar with the old system. So how are we going to get them up to speed? We also, there was a recognition that Concord employees are high-performing and high-achieving. You have an incredibly talented and very dedicated staff devoted to its townspeople. There was a desire, a palpable desire, for even greater coordination between departments. As we look at the select board goals and the town manager goals, we have departments and leaders that are, and employees that are striving to accomplish a myriad of goals, and better coordination from support groups, departments that are support personnel for some of these goals is really, really important. And then finally, there were some data-driven recommendations about some of what should be included in the training that we're conducting this week. I also have met with each manager and supervisor individually. These meetings were entirely positive overall, and there's a lot of guarded enthusiasm, I would call it, for initiatives that are really, would move the town forward, particularly around efficiencies and innovation.
So does this apply to everyone we hire, or only people starting at a certain level, or?
This is for all regular employees, so both part and full-time, not limited status employees and not temporary employees.
Okay.
And non-union employees, of course. Although I think we should mention that this concept has been put forth in the new union contracts for non-sworn personnel.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
And so any organization looking at a pay-for-performance structure wants to align employee behavior and performance with their organization's mission and goals. And this is some of the greatest lift that we're seeing in all these conversations and in training today and in our employee listening sessions we did the week before Thanksgiving. It's clear that folks are enjoying seeing things like the value statement that was put together by the leadership and management team that has just begun meeting in the last, 4 months or so. They really buy into that. For some of them, it's a first look at select board goals and town manager goals. And so becoming part of that bigger picture, becoming part of the organizational move forward is really energizing for them. We had employees and managers have looked over the evaluation forms that have been newly constructed that were provided in your package, and those were met with a good thumbs up. There was some suggestions made. You've seen the suggestions have been incorporated into your package, but we did have some feedback from employees on the form that we've incorporated in. So that has been, the communication sessions have been working very, very well. There was excitement and enthusiasm around the succession planning portion. In the evaluation form, there are 3 levels of meets expectations performance. You notice?
Yeah, I did, the top, and then there's a solid and a satisfactory. Yeah.
Right.
And I thought that was related to the level. I wasn't sure how that.
Well, for the actual evaluation form, not including the merit pay plan, but just the regular evaluation, that's really a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Do you get the step or do you not get the step? And most of our employees, by and large, the vast majority, of course, get their step. They're meeting expectations. But by dividing it up at the 3 levels, that gives us an opportunity to use that for succession planning. Okay. So folks who are hitting the cover off the ball, so to speak, who are consistently exceeding our expectations, where could we use their skills and abilities, maybe for promotional opportunity, if you've got an opening coming from retirement or whatever, or could we use their abilities in another department where there may be a gap? And so that's, invigorating and exciting for folks to see on their evaluation, this is the level we see you at. So that's been met very, very positively as well. And so we can go to the next one. So now heading into goal setting. What we did initially, setting the goals, you can imagine when the select board sets goals, you're setting for the entire organization, and so we need to take that the next level down and so forth until we're down to the entry-level employee. And so each of the SMT members looked at the select board and town manager goals, and of course they had a little help because we did put some assignments in them. But they looked at the ones that they were most directly responsible for and said, okay, that's me, that's my group. They wrote their goal for that particular item, what needs to be accomplished, and some of those are a 1-line goal, and some of them have multiple, this small group of people in my department has to do the first thing, and then once they do that, then the next group does the next thing. And because some of your goals are multi-year goals,
Right.
of course, we're just looking at this first 6 months.
Right.
What can be accomplished in this short, time window? And so after they turned in, or after they wrote their base goal, then we asked them to itemize who within their department owns a piece of that. So they may have multiple managers, supervisors, or employees that are tied to that goal, that it'll cascade down to, so that your goals are going to be throughout the organization by the time we're done. We asked them to choose from all the goals that, because they may have a nice cadre of goals, what are their top 3 consistent level goals and stretch level goals? And we're using consistent for meeting expectation and stretch for exceeding or going beyond expectations. And then finally, I wanted to mention, as I mentioned before, not only are we looking at who within the department will be responsible for the cascade of that goal, but which other departments are required in order for them to be successful. Which departments are going to be supporting those goals, collaborating on those goals, or participating in those goals. So those linkages are going to make for a really strong binder as we move forward to achieve your goals and the goals of the town manager. After that first round, the town manager reviewed those goals, and those are good to be moved on to the next level. So the SMT have begun collaborating with their managers and supervisors, and those goals are being prepared right now. And I have meetings with almost every one of them this week to review those goals and make sure that we're staying on our timeline. Next, we have an example. We use the police department example, and you can see their goals, their action items, if you will, are listed in the center. You'll see the second column, the goal, I'm having trouble reading that. The goal number, thank you, is either, if you see SB1, that's the first select board goal, TM4, you get the picture.
Yep.
And then who are their internal participants and who are their linked participants, so that we can begin to tie these together and make sure that everyone who's required to be participating in the goal for it to be successful shares that goal. Then we have deadlines, and whether it's recommended by the SMT member for it to be a consistent level goal or a stretch level goal.
Yeah, I really like these examples because, well, I'm the liaison for the 250th, and I know what's involved, and so it's really exciting to see it all laid out here and who's involved and how much detail. This was a very good example department to use, I think.
I'm glad that it demonstrated for
Yeah.
you what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I think it's great process, and looks like a lot of good stuff here. I echo Terry's points there. There's some good specificity. I would just keep pushing on measurable. And so, like, for example, I look at the overtime thing. What are we trying to do? Reduce it by 5%, 10%, 50%? Like, what's good? You know, saying, hey, we're going to analyze it. I'd love to see us compared to what other towns do. I'd love to see us identify, you know, what's a reasonable target goal. And, you know, hey, maybe the base target is X% and the stretch target is Y%. So just wherever we can, I use that as an example, but wherever we can, you know, hey, we're looking at the body worn camera thing, 25, replace the cameras. What's the cost benefit there? You know, what's the, you know, I get it. We want to have a consistent capital replacement program. How does that help us, right? Demonstrate sort of the value that you're going to kind of deliver, not just, hey, you know, we want some money to go do something. So just keep pushing on those kind of like specifics and just thinking about what's the end. So at the end of the year, when you look back, what would success look like for the town and for you?
Yeah, thank you for that. So we talked a little bit about the performance assessment program, or the new process with the new forms. When we were talking with employees in our listening sessions the week before Thanksgiving, I questioned whether employees, how they would feel about participating in a self-assessment, because frankly, I wanted to have a self-assessment, but I didn't want to shove it down people's throats, you know. They were very engaged and said absolutely they wanted to do a self-assessment before the performance evaluation and ensure that they were able to capture the things that they accomplished for the year, for that to be considered in their evaluation. We talked about the evaluation of essential skills. That's the basic performance document that'll confirm whether a person meets, whether you're in for the step or you're not in for the step. And it will identify emerging talent for our succession planning initiatives. And then the second piece is the evaluation of the step, or of the merit pay. And that will happen at the close of the 6 months at June 30. And that'll determine whether a person gets a consistent level payment or a stretch level payment. And
Or,
we've been-
or,
or none at all.
or none, right?
And we've been very clear in all of our meetings, making the statement that, of course, a person has to be meeting expectations on their performance evaluation. They have to be in one of the quality performance categories. And in order to get their stretch payment, they have to not only be meeting basic expectations, but they have to get their consistent level performance goals as well as their stretch level performance goals.
Do we have any, not necessarily explicit, but like how many people we think kind of, do we have expectations as to how many people will fall in sort of which buckets, right?
No, not yet. I mean, this is, we're still formulating all of the goals, and
Yeah.
so no.
Okay, because some of it comes to the kind of the, just the tone and the culture of what you establish, right? I just say, I mean, if it becomes perceived as sort of like everybody gets it, right? This is a thing that sort of, hey, you know what? This is an expectation that we're all going to get the big bonus, right? So I don't have a formula. I'm just saying, like, how you talk about it and how you communicate, I think does impact whether somebody shows up and is really happy that they got what they got, or really like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that's all I got, right? So just think about that in terms of like the culture, the tone that, how you're communicating it. And I think you want it to be something that is, hey, not everybody, it's not a freebie, not everybody gets it, but it's also not impossible, right? It's also not sort of like, it's hitting that right balance, right? That says, hey, you know what, people are into it, but it is also helping drive performance.
The one thing we decided, I think, we decided that we did not want to do was any kind of a forced.
Yeah, I don't think, 5% of you will get this and 20, yeah, but still, even just sort of how you sort of talk about what's achievable and what you really need to do to sort of stretch and exceed expectations.
So that's that stretch performance, right? So you're getting a lot of good conversations around
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
we
I
should-
have some
we should learn.
questions about the mechanics a little bit. You said that we made a decision to have the base of a range at 85%?
The 85th percentile.
85th percentile, right? And who made that decision?
It was made before I arrived here, but it's in all the documents that were approved at town meeting, right?
Right, so that, we had extensive hearings in front of the Personnel Board.
Personnel Board.
And
Okay.
that was their recommendation, and that's what went to town meeting and approved at town meeting.
When they came and they gave those ranges, right? But I don't remember them saying explicitly that they had upped all the ranges to be at the 85th percentile.
At a town meeting discussion?
Yeah.
Well, I
think you're right. Yeah.
Right. So I mean, they come in and they say, here's our ranges, right? And we vote on the ranges.
Right.
But
Right.
I don't think we were ever told that, oh, this range now, the bottom is at the 85th percentile, right?
I'd have to go back, but I would be surprised if that was not part of the Personnel Board's presentation. I mean, we
Okay.
had many discussions about that. That was, compensation was a big item to come out of the Personnel Study Task Force report. We had
No, I'm not,
many
it might have been the right
discussions.
decision. I'm just saying I don't remember the process that we used to do it. So, I mean, if it was the Personnel Board and that's their purview, then now I understand the process. Yeah, that's my first question. My second question is, the merit raises, this is an initiative to do merit raises, merit pay. I guess it's not a raise, it's a merit bonus. This is a new thing that we're doing now?
Well,
'Cause
you have had merit pay in the past, and I'll,
Is it new? And so I'm getting back to the thing we saw earlier, which we saw the incremental cost
Right.
of merit pay. So I'm saying, is this a new initiative, or is it just a reshuffling of the money we had available? And now we're saying, some of it is for merit and some of it is for just,
No.
so which Is
The
it an
town, this
incremental?
is a rebooted merit program. There are, it's a different plan, but there has been a component, a merit component of pay, as long as I've been
It's not
with the
entirely new
town.
money, right?
Yes.
It's
incremental
not.
money.
It's not new money, it's just a different
It's
way.
a different way of,
We've had a
Giving
merit
out the money,
system for
yes.
decades.
But this is more,
This is a different merit system.
I
it's
think
more,
Go ahead.
well, it's more understandable to the people who are getting the money, I guess. They understand how they get it. Is that?
And it's
a-
more tied to goals and stuff, I think.
Absolutely, setting goals and aligning those goals with
Okay.
your goals for the town.
Right,
and the
I love
town's
that.
Right.
goal for the town.
Yeah, that part's wonderful. We never had that part before.
And the employees are embracing that. Now, fair to say, they haven't all seen their goals yet, and so they have a number of questions. What's this
sure.
gonna look like?
Sure.
Right.
And what if my goals change during the
Sure.
year? Because Concord has a way of asking for new stuff, you know?
Right.
And so there are
Right,
a
we
number
do.
of questions around that. But I think, you know, today's employee is energized by being part of something greater. You know, they want to see their impact, and they want to be developed, they want to be, you know, poured into, and they're willing, your employees are willing to work very hard.
Yep. And, yeah, no, that's helpful. And just to be clear, when you say 85th percentile, I'm pretty sure what you mean is 100th is average, right?
No.
No.
The minimum.
It
is
used to
that
be
No.
50%.
But when you say the 85th percentile
Yep,
in the market.
as the minimum,
yep,
right? So the way I understand it from my job is 100 is, this is the average salary for somebody at that position. So the 85th percentile is,
You and I.
because that's different, there's also, you're in the 85th percentile of all people.
That's right.
I think that's,
That's the one.
Consider
Which is
that
really
of
high.
the 29 towns,
that's what I,
if they all had the same exact job
Yeah.
X,
yep,
that your minimum is greater than 85% of the other minimums.
Right.
So you are
Yes,
establishing
Okay,
yourself.
so that's, I mean, I'm not saying it's wrong, it's just, there's two different ways to sort of, look. So it depends on how you, so 85th, 85, you're higher than 85% of all the other towns.
Right. It's part of our recruiting.
As a
strategy.
minimum.
as a
Right.
minimum.
It's part of our recruiting.
I'd like to understand how we got to that.
Because
Well, I think we did it to
For recruitment.
For
Right.
recruitment, and to
We want
retain,
to-
for recruit.
to
We
recruit
did
the
it for
top
good
people,
reason.
yeah.
I
That
mean,
was the
Well,
reason, yeah.
we did.
Recruit and retain the best people.
It's hard to compete.
Well,
So
other towns
I have a
do
separate
it with,
question. This is, I mean, I've done a lot of this in the past. This is a lot of work. Do we have a tool for managing all the collection of this data, information, or is it all in spreadsheets?
You know, right now,
Yeah.
it is an Excel spreadsheet.
All right.
Okay, and so that's why some of the columns, we can,
Yeah.
you know, sort
Yeah, yeah.
by town manager goal 4 and see
Yeah,
everybody
yeah,
that's in,
yeah,
you know,
okay.
included in that. I've talked with Amalia, you know, this is something very new, we're just getting started on it.
Yeah.
It's gonna be unwieldy, right? And so we're talking about how do we better manage this? And how do managers who have large groups better manage the goal achievement?
Right.
You know, we spent quite a bit of time today in training, talking with supervisors about, you know, the last thing we want to do is set goals on January 1st, and people finish June 30th, and there hasn't been any conversation about how things are going. So we're talking about these individual one-on-one meetings, and how will we conduct that? What will that look like and feel like, and how do we make sure that we don't get to the end and we say, oh, sorry, you didn't meet, when the employee thinks
Right.
they're running and gunning the whole time, right?
Right.
And so we spent quite a bit of time on that. And part of that is, as a manager, a dashboard would be helpful in how to manage that. And there are some tools available, even through Microsoft, that we already have, that we may be able to use. So it's going to be a little clunky at first, but I think we've got some options that we already own the software for.
Great.
Good.
I think it's great that you're aligning the goals.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
just,
fantastic.
it seems so
It really
obvious,
is, yeah.
but it's just great that we're doing that, really. So thank you.
Yeah, it's the first time we're doing, it's hard to do it. Because you've got, some committee that votes them in a meeting at night, and now you've got to go through the town manager, right? And then, and then each department, and then each supervisor, so this is the first time
It's great.
they're really able to align it.
It's great, yep.
I'll just wrap by saying, these guys have heard so many times, I cannot wait to see on June 30th what all we've been able to accomplish together, because I think you're going to be able to see,
Right.
the fruits of all this labor.
Right.
And it is, it's a lot. And it's a lot for our employees, it's a lot for our supervisors and managers. But I think the juice will be worth the squeeze.
Thank you, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's great, a lot of work.
Thank you.
Well, that was a good meeting.
All right.
Do I have a motion to
That's
adjourn?
it?
Motion to adjourn, yay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good.